Okay, we're ready. Live streamers, what's going on? You guys there? Let me scroll down and look. Let's see who we got. All right, no one in the live stream. Fantastic. But hey, the Ben Joravsky Show is underway for your Wednesday, April 24th. There we go. I'll get there soon enough. But before we get going into the show, we would like to thank the following unions for bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9. What are you doing over there? And the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Okay, Ben's taking medicine live on the air. That's medicine, guys, all right? It's good stuff. And the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board with us and bringing back the... Okay, doing the live reads.
Sorry, man.
Thank you once again to those unions for bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our dear friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Ben's got his medicine, so I guess he's ready. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Wednesday, April 24th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, we welcome back legendary Chicago journalist Monroe Anderson. Illinois State Rep Ann Williams will join us. And we welcome for the first time in our brand new studio, Ben, put on your big boy pants, Personal Pack CEO Terry Cosgrove. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this, you get the idea, Wednesday. And here's why. So, in my never-ending pursuit of knowledge that will make me a better person, I'm taking lessons from Rahm Emanuel on how to be a better journalist. What's that you say, folks? Rahm's a politician. What could he possibly teach me about journalism? Well, what you don't know, or what you might not know, is that Mayor Rahm's got a lot of time on his hands since he decided not to run for re-election, and he's taking to writing a column for the Atlantic. And yesterday, he weighed in on Pete Buttigieg, Pete Shaker Buttigieg, Mayor Pete of South Bend.
Well, if this guy wins and becomes president, you're screwed. You cannot say this guy's name.
Peter Buttigieg. Anyway, apparently Rahm's a huge fan of Mayor Pete, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, who's running for president as a Democrat. Very impressed with him for many different reasons. Rahm is, among which Buttigieg is a Rhodes Scholar, a Harvard grad, and a veteran who served in Afghanistan. And he's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. Anyway, Rahm loves this guy. But the column that Rahm wrote also gives Rahm an opportunity to chide journalists for not asking the proper questions of Buttigieg. Now, I know you would say that a mayor who spent most of his career ducking and dodging and evading and misleading and just downright making stuff up as he goes along would be the last guy any journalist would turn to for tips on finding the truth. But like I said, I'm all about self-improvement, people. So I've decided I'm going to take some advice from Mayor Rahm, all right? So Mayor Rahm writes that reporters are spending way too much time commenting on Mayor Pete's sexual preference. Turns out Mayor Pete's gay. Now, personally, I don't know any reporters who spend a lot of time talking about that. They mention that. It's part of the narrative. Mayor Pete talks about that. He has his husband with him when he goes on the campaign trail, so reporters mention that. But nobody is like obsessed with it. But see, folks, what Mayor Rahm has learned to do is you set up a straw man to knock him down. It's the first trick of the trade of deceitful column writing. This guy's already a master of the craft, and he just started it. Anyway, Rahm wants us to ask questions like this. Let me go to the story. Hold on. It's on my phone. Okay. I'm quoting Rahm's article. When lots of his peers at Harvard and Oxford grabbed their diploma and headed off to Wall Street or Silicon Valley, Mayor Pete decided to serve his country in the military. Why? What spurred that decision? What did he learn from the experience beyond what he saw on the battlefield? Why does he think more Americans aren't choosing to serve their country in the same way? That's the kind of question Rahm wants reporters to ask of Mayor Pete. In other words, they're questions designed as hard-hitting questions that are really intended to butter up Mayor Pete. So I'm like, yes. It's like you act like a lion, but roll over like a lamb. So to give you an idea how this is would put into practice, I am now going to interview Dennis.
Oh.
You ready? All right. So Dr. D.
Yeah, not a doctor.
It's been said that the ladies all love you for your body and your mind. What do you take greater pride in? Your body or your mind?
No one really says that, but my mind.
Okay, there you go. That's how you ask a question. Or how about this one? Dennis, you're just such a fabulously wonderful guy.
Huh.
Can I touch your head?
I'm bald. Got some stubble there. You can touch that.
Okay, I know. Dennis, a final question.
Okay.
You're so unbelievably good looking. Oh. Did you ever look in the mirror in the morning when you're shaving and say, just burst into song like Minnie Riperton, loving me, it's easy 'cause I'm beautiful?
Never.
Okay.
No singing.
All right, folks, you get the idea. We have a great show today, everybody. Monroe Anderson will be here. He'll be talking Trump, and more Trump. Yeah, I got the impeachment question for absolutely everybody watching the studio today. I got all the questions, all the issues of obstruction of justice laid out from the Mueller report. So should we impeach Donald Trump? And all their issues of the day with Monroe Anderson, our Trump expert. Ann Williams, State Representative Ann Williams, will be in the studio talking about state house politics. And, of course, 2:30. Man, have I been looking forward to this. TC, get those big boy pants on. Terry Cosgrove from Personal Pack will be in the studio. Talk about all the political issues of the day, particularly on the reproductive rights front. So a lot of political talk ahead of us. But before we do any of that, I just have to ask the fabulously good-looking and wonderfully talented Dr. D. Do you have the local news?
Oh, I got the national news.
That's a good answer.
By the way, new listeners, that big boy pants thing, Terry Cosgrove was a guest on our last show. The one where, they got fired from.
You mean the show where they said, get out of here.
Get lost,
right,
Joravsky.
yeah.
Take all these newspapers with you, you weirdo. No, on our last show, Terry Cosgrove was a guest, and in voting for J.B. Pritzker, we were kind of on the fence, I guess, and Terry told Ben, put on your big boy pants.
Yeah, he wanted me to vote for Pritzker. He was so bad. Stop complaining and vote for Pritzker.
All right, it's the middle of the day. Let's talk about that national news happening this afternoon. Ben, if you could, please put on that hazmat suit. I brought you there over in the corner.
Uh-oh.
Because, the national news is nothing but a bunch of hot garbage today. And that can only mean one thing these days: Trump tweets. Lots and lots of Trump tweets.
Yeah.
This morning in a series of tweets, our president threatened to close down the border. Mm-hmm. He obviously ranted like a madman about the Mueller report. Cue the ukulele.
The Mueller report, despite being written by angry Democrats and Trump haters, and with unlimited money behind it, $35 million, didn't lay a glove on me. I did nothing wrong. If the partisan Dems ever tried to impeach, I would first head to the U.S. Supreme Court. Not only are there no high crimes and
the tweet went on.
Okay.
Tweet.
Are there no high crimes and misdemeanors? There are no crimes by me at all. All of the crimes were committed by crooked Hillary, the Dems, the DNC, and dirty cops. And we caught them in the act. We've waited for Mueller and won. So now the Dems look to Congress. I'm not done.
Okay, sorry, Donald.
As the Dems look to Congress as last hope.
All right, folks, that Trump is doubling down on his Blago tactics, and that before that it was Johnny Cochran in the OJ trial, where you just attack and assault the prosecutors to avoid a discussion of what you did. So I will just point out that today's New York Times has this great a compendium of all the charges against Donald Trump. And from time to time, I'll be asking people who come into the studio whether they think these are impeachable offenses. So I'd ask, first question would be for Donald Trump, is this obstruction of justice? And I'll just read the first charge. Here we go. Headline, Trump tried to fire Mueller. After learning in June 2017 that he was under investigation over possible obstruction of justice, Mr. Trump ordered the White House counsel Donald F. McGahn II over the phone to have the Justice Department fire Mr. Mueller based on the president's view that the special counsel had a conflicts of interest. Mr. Trump backed off after Mr. McGahn refused to carry out the directive and prepared to resign in protest. Is this obstruction of justice when you ask your chief lawyer to fire the guy who's investigating you? Or is it not obstruction of justice because that lawyer refused to do so? That's a discussion that I think Donald Trump should answer. So, well, is he just saying that, well, I tried to obstruct justice, but I couldn't do it because my lawyer wouldn't do it? Is that his defense? Okay. That's like saying, well, I tried to murder somebody. I had the knife out, but someone stopped me from doing so. So that's the Trump defense, Steve.
So on his Twitter tirade, he also threw a jab over at Obama.
Former CIA analyst Larry Johnson, not the basketball player, CIA analyst, accuses United Kingdom intelligence of helping Obama administration spy on the 2016 Trump presidential campaign. Wow. It is now just a question of time before the truth comes out. And when it does, it will be a beauty.
Yeah, it'll be a beauty. All right, well, Al, since he's discussing past alleged crimes by presidents, let's go to another accusation in the Mueller report. Trump punished McCann, that lawyer I just mentioned, to deny the attempt to fire Mueller. Trump pushed McCann to deny the attempt to fire Mueller. Mr. Trump's attempt to fire Mr. Mueller came to light in news reports in January 2018. Mr. Trump repeatedly pushed his lawyer, Mr. McCann, to state that the president had not directed him to fire Mr. Mueller and to write a memo for our records denying the reports. Although Mr. Trump threatened to fire him if he did not comply, Mr. Mueller refused, saying the articles were accurate. So, let me get this straight. So the claim is it's not obstruction of justice if McCann doesn't do what you want him to do and fire Mueller. Well, is it obstruction of justice if you ask I can't even get his name right. If you ask your lawyer McCann to lie and deny that you asked him to fire Mueller? Is that obstruction of justice? I'm just asking you, Donald Trump. Maybe you should tweet about that, D.
By the way, on his way to Atlanta via helicopter, who was he, Arnold Schwarzenegger? Trump weighed in on the Democratic investigations against him, saying, quote,
"We're fighting all the subpoenas."
Yeah, okay. Oh, my goodness.
In other news nationally, the longest-serving Republican in the Iowa's legislature is becoming a Democrat.
Yeah, I saw this.
Representative Andy McKean said he is making the switch after 40 years in the Iowa State House. Why? Well, because the amount of moderates in the party has thinned in favor of candidates like Trump who favor partisanship. Here's the quote from McKean at a press conference, quote, "With the 2020 presidential election looming on the horizon, I feel, as a Republican, that I need to be able to support the standard bearer of our party. Unfortunately, that's something I'm unable to do." Ben, do you see any Republicans following suit leading into the 2020 elections?
Well, no, I think that most of the Republicans who have fled the Republican Party because of Donald Trump have already done so, either by not running for re-election or by just very quietly. Or a lot of them did in 2016 where they announced that they were going to endorse Hillary Clinton. Now, the interesting thing about Iowa, Dennis, where this Andy McKean is a representative and is moving from the Republican to the Democrat, is that the state very much remains in the hands of Trump, if you will. I saw there's a recent poll by the Des Moines Register newspaper said 90% of Republicans in Iowa thought Donald Trump was doing a pretty good job. But here's the interesting thing. This shows you how polls sometimes are very odd. They give conflicting messages. 40%, follow me in this, folks, 40% of Republicans, when asked, said they hope Trump has a challenger. So 90% said he was doing a good job, but 40% said they want him to have a challenger. 41% said they hope he doesn't have a challenger, and 19% said they're not sure. I can't make up my mind. As always, unsure. So maybe it sends a message that William Weld, who is talking about the former governor of Massachusetts, who says he's going to run a challenge in the Republican primaries against Donald Trump. Maybe there is a number of people in the Republican Party who are willing to vote against Donald Trump. I don't know. 40% say they want him to have a challenger. That suggests that even though they like the overall job he's doing, they're uncomfortable with him as the standard bearer of the Republican Party. So, maybe there's William Weld gets 30 to 40% of the vote in the Republican primary. That's really going to hurt Donald Trump going into the general election.
Oh, hey, looks like Left Wing Limball's joined us on the YouTube live stream
I
chat.
love Left Wing.
What's up, buddy? How's it going? Oh, yeah. And Viren DB says, good afternoon. Well, that's nice of you. Thanks. All right. Well, we asked all of you the same question on both Facebook and Twitter pages. Will more Republicans follow the lead of this McKean feller and join the Democratic Party? We have a few of your comments to read here on the Facebook page. Like Greg's comment. Greg says, Leach Republican then must have voted with Republicans. How much? Mansion? Snow? Not so big. Okay. Valerie weighed in, says, in answer to your question, I wouldn't be surprised. I saw the Republican former governor of Massachusetts on Lawrence O'Donnell's show last night, and he had nothing nice to say about him. I don't think he's leaving the party, but I think he's going to run for president.
Yeah, that's William Weld.
I kind of liked what the 73 or so year old man had to say. He was a breath of fresh air and reminded me of the moderate Republicans of yesteryear. I thought they were gone. Be like these folks here and weigh in on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page at Benny J Show. Also on Twitter at Benny J Show. Ben, can you spell that last name for him, please?
Jora. V as in victory, SKY.
We're going to be reading your comments throughout today's program. Like Valerie's comment, Valerie says, hey, he reminds me of Alec Baldwin.
Who does, me or
McKean?
Oh, okay.
Oh, get over yourself, Joravsky.
The young Alec Baldwin. Dennis. What was it? Red Hunt for October or whatever that movie.
Hunt for Red October.
Oh well, I had the reversal dyslexia. How have I gotten this far into business?
Now, of course, we will keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along. Benny J, we're moving forward.
Yes, sir, we are.
You ready to find out what's going on in Chicago and/or Illinois this morning or this afternoon?
I was born ready.
Love that answer. Always a fantastic answer, because coming up after this short little break, people, we're going to find out what else is news. I cannot talk today. We're going to find out what else is news.
I can't wait. The doctor's going to pluck that little trick out of his little sleeve. We'll see what it is when we return. At Chicagoland Cremation Options, we are committed to listening, educating, and guiding your family through the cremation process. Whether it is time of death or when planning your wishes for the future, Chicagoland Cremation Options can accommodate you at an affordable price and with great dignity. Avoid funeral home costs with direct access to a crematory for a cremation. Chicagoland Cremation Options, just south of O'Hare, 5 minutes west of Chicago. It's a family-owned business and operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Visit it at ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. Jeff. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Oh, yeah. Jeff Manuel. What a pianist. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky
love
Show,
that commercial, man.
live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, we are indeed live. By the way, I got to give a shout out to my good friend Kitty Kurtz. She said, Ben, do me a favor. Tell people about the House Theater of Chicago presenting Pinocchio, a tall tale about telling the truth. Pinocchio, a tall tale about telling the truth. Man, I know all about telling the truth. We were just talking about that a little while ago. Rahm lecturing journalists on how to tell the truth. Donald Trump lecturing everybody on the truth. But they can learn a thing or two from Pinocchio about telling the truth, huh? At least you know when Pinocchio's not telling the truth.
Oh, Pinocchio. When's that show again?
Pinocchio, a tall tale about telling the truth. May 19th at the Chopin Theater in Wicker Park, Chopin. That's how you spell it. The House Theater has been proudly producing original plays and events for 18 years. You want more information? www.thehousetheater.com.
Two W's, guys.
www. World Wrestling Federation. www.thehousetheater.com. All right, what you got for me, boy?
It's 2019. You don't really need the www these days.
Yeah, what the heck?
All right, we're about to find out what's going on locally. It's time for What Else Is News. And right after his first 100 days as governor, literally on day 101, and yes, right after a somewhat glowing 100-day gubernatorial performance review from the Ben Joravsky Show, I believe we gave him a B-, isn't that right?
Didn't I give him an A for something?
Not at all. It was a B-.
There's a lot of incompletes, as I recall, in that
Yeah, our
grade.
guest gave him incompletes,
Yeah.
but Ben gave him a B-. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker gets caught up in another property tax scandal. More on that in a moment. But first, Ben Joravsky. I don't know about you, buddy, but I'm starting to get Illinois congressional district race fever. Check my temperature. In the last month or so, we've been seeing more congressional candidates coming out of the woodwork. We've got barely Democrat Dan Lipinski's rematch from hell with actual Democrat Maureen Newman to look forward to. She recently announced that she'll be running again in the 3rd congressional district race. Yesterday, we discussed Congressman Sean Casten's potential 6th congressional opponent, former Bruce Rauner Lieutenant Governor Evelyn Sanguinetti. Ben, what were your thoughts on that again?
Oh, man, come on, Evelyn Sanguinetti. She just got finished running for lieutenant governor, unsuccessfully, I might say. Now she's already decided that Sean Casten has not done his job. How many months has it been? 3 months? Give the guy a chance, for crying out. You know, hey, folks, I gave Rahm Emanuel 3 months. 3 months, D, all right? How much have I given Lori Lightfoot? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Miles Porter has entered the building. I love it when Miles Porter enters the building. Anyway, I gave Mayor Rahm 3 months. So come on. Give him a chance.
All right, hey, Miles, I think our guests are outside, by the way. Are they? You may have walked right past them. That's good times. All right, so, yesterday we talked about Sanguinetti. Now, if you recall, people, the blue wave was huge in Illinois in 2018 election back in November. A lot of districts flipped Democrat. Ben, watch out. There's a blue wave coming through.
Ouch.
Yeah, a lot of those districts flipped Democrat. Well, we have a new Republican challenger in one of those districts. His name is Ted Grottle.
Oh, yeah, Grottle.
He is looking to challenge Democrat Lauren Underwood in the 14th district. And Ben colored me concerned here, but I'm afraid this guy could be a threat because Ted Grottle already has his very first campaign ad out. And in it, we learned something about this fella, this Grottle. He was involved in an activity that rural, middle of nowhere Americans are really, really into. Ted Grottle used to play college football. And to make him even more of a political threat, he played for white middle of nowhere Illinois' favorite college football team, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. He played the white guy's position, kicker. Oh, no. And his first ad features dialogue from legendary Notre Dame coach Lou Holtz. My God, just throw in an endorsement from New Balance and white people will have their perfect candidate.
He's ready to go, huh?
Grottle recently tweeted about his 14th congressional candidacy announcement, throwing in a little dig to Lauren Underwood here. Here's the tweet from Grottle. I've never run for office before, but when I see Democrats like @Lauren Underwood trying to push the country toward policies that harm our individual freedom and threaten our strong economy, I know I can't stay on the sidelines. Sidelines, a football reference. This guy's good. So without further ado, here's the first campaign ad from the first Republican challenger to Lauren Underwood in the 14th congressional district. Ted Grottle.
Let me tell you about an underdog, a field goal kicker, a walk-on at Notre Dame. He didn't start all 4 years. He asked for a fifth year. I told him to get a job. He wouldn't give up, so I gave him a shot. Now, on my team, he kicked his way to the top.
On its way. Ted Grottle ties it with his longest field goal of the season.
All right, that's enough. Thing's like 3 minutes long. So,
God.
Ben Joravsky, what are your thoughts here on Ted Grottle? Weigh in here and this 14th congressional
All right. Well,
district
it's
race.
similar to my attitude about what's going on with Evelyn Sanguinetti in the the 6th congressional against Sean Casten. Obviously, from the moment the Democrats won, the Republicans were plotting to take back the seats. That's politics, folks. So it's not as though there's a track record they're running against. It's just they want to get those seats back, all right? They had those seats, and they want them back. And so they're just, neither Casten or Underwood are Ben Joravsky Democrats. They're all more in the middle. They're more centrist types, but they're trying to put my head on their body. Or more likely Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's head on there, and they're trying to scare people in the suburbs into somehow thinking that centrist Democrats are extremists on issues of the economy, which is very bizarre. Ted Grottle suddenly, like we're free liberty is under assault. I mean, Donald Trump just passed a huge tax break that makes the wealthier even wealthier. So how is that suddenly under assault? They're doing away with environmental regulations. How is that under assault? All of Gurney is going to be underwater because Wisconsin has decided not to have any kind of environmental oversight over Foxconn. How is that under assault? And yet, by the way, D, can I just say this right now? I mean, it is my radio show or podcast. All of a sudden, it's okay to have a jock, Lou Holtz, or Ted Grottle, have political opinions. Republicans love it when celebrity jocks have political opinions that support Republicans. But, when it's Colin Kaepernick, just stand and play football. When it's LeBron James, just dribble. Right? Remember that? Isn't that interesting? All of a sudden, the great political philosopher Lou Holtz is weighing in. And same thing with Ditka. Remember, Ditka, Mike Ditka. The guy, Mike Ditka was like a little to the right of Ronald Reagan, and Republicans loved him. So when he talks, it's like, it's a wise man. But when LeBron James says something, just dribble the basketball. Isn't that interesting, D?
So Ted Grottle, the new opponent here for Lauren Underwood. We're going to have to wait and see how this one turns out.
You know what she's going to do? She's going to block that kick, baby.
Oh, that was good.
Right.
Oh, man. Hire this guy right here for your campaign. Block that kick.
Blocks the. By the way, how about Damian Lillard last night?
Oh, hey, sports talk,
sorry,
huh? Right in the middle of the politic talk, huh?
It's Lauren Underwood's going to be like Damian Lillard. Grottle's going to be defending her. Bam! Step back.
We're moving on. JB, what the hell, bro?
Oh, come on, JB.
Here we were yesterday giving you some props on your first 100 days as governor.
B-.
Guys, a B- from Ben Joravsky's pretty good, all right?
By the way, Monroe Anderson has entered the building. Monroe Anderson has entered the building.
Here we are, day 101, and this happened. Democratic Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, his wife, and his brother-in-law are under federal criminal investigation for a dubious residential property tax appeal that dodged him during his gubernatorial campaign last year, WBEZ has learned.
Yeah.
A law enforcement source familiar with the investigation confirmed to WBEZ that the probe, which has not been revealed publicly until now, began last October and remains active. There are no signs that criminal charges are imminent.
Yes, okay, but let's give credit where credit is due. Yes, the name of the station is WBZ, but the reporter who did the work, who got his hands dirty in that, the great Dave McKinney, who, by the way, was on this show. All right, you can download it, but not now, of course, because you're going to be listening to me and you and Monroe Anderson. But after the show, Dave McKinney talking about Blagojevich. So McKinney spent his time investigating Blagojevich, and now he's investigating Pritzker. And this is a story we talked about so much last year, Toiletgate. And that is, of course, has to do with the complexities of our property tax system in Chicago and Cook County. And the lower the value of your property, the less you pay in taxes. And J.B. Pritzker's the value of J.B. Pritzker's Gold Coast mansion was lowered, to put it mildly, because he had no toilets in the So the accusation is that he removed the toilets, or had the toilets removed, so he'd have a lower property tax value. And at the time, D, when this first emerged, I'm like, you're a billionaire. You're spending tens of millions, $170 million total to be governor of the state of Illinois. Why are you messing around with nickel-dime property taxes? You save, I think, $330,000 is what Dave McKinney's story says on property taxes. And because of that savings, you're jeopardizing all the goodwill you want to do as governor of the state of Illinois. What are they? You know, I just find it so frustrating. And you watch, Monroe Anderson, you're here. I know you're here to talk about Trump, but you watch. The Republicans are going to use this to try to torpedo his fair tax proposal. You know, the idea of
of course. But what he did is what millionaires and billionaires do.
That is
Trump
correct.
does the same thing all the time.
That is correct.
So in front of our very eyes.
So do you think the Republicans are going to criticize Trump for doing it?
Well, if I were JB, I would flip it back on him.
And do what?
I would mention things that Trump has done, because we're in the age of whataboutisms anyway. So what I'd do if I were JB is say, well, what about Trump?
I think we're going to hear a lot of whataboutisms coming out of JB Pritzker.
Now, fellas, get ready, because I don't know if you can hear that. There's a bus pulling into the Sun-Times studio here. WBEZ has also confirmed that Illinois First Lady M.K. Pritzker's personal assistant, who is involved in the property tax appeal, Christine Lovely, is being represented by one of Chicago's most high-powered lawyers. Her attorney, Reed Shar, is a former federal prosecutor who helped convict ex-Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich on corruption charges.
Yeah, McKinney's World. Again, it's Dave McKinney, investigative reporter who covered so much of Blagojevich and did that great podcast on Public Figure A, which you can hear all about by downloading our show after today's show.
Absolutely, after today's show.
And his world is coming together. This is something that happens. You all know this. A federal prosecutor, after about learning the tricks of the trade for 8 or 9, 10 years, then becomes a criminal defense lawyer, makes huge amounts of money, putting to work all the tricks of the trades that he mastered as a federal prosecutor on behalf of the well-to-do, right, Monroe? It's an old thing.
And he also uses his connections.
Yes, it's connections. So, I don't know.
Nobody that nobody don't know.
Absolutely. By the way, should we put a cap on the amount of money a criminal defense lawyer makes? There's a cap on the amount of money a federal prosecutor makes. Should we put a cap just to make things even? What do you think, Monroe? There's an idea.
I like it.
All right, we like that idea. There you go.
Like Ben said,
of course, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, you're not a criminal defense lawyer.
Hey, I'm not a doctor. All right. So to hear more, like Ben said, with that Dave McKinney podcast we did, that bonus interview, go check it out. It's at chicagoreader.com, chicago.suntimes.com, or wherever you download your favorite podcasts. And Monroe Anderson would love this interview because there's so much foul language. Oh, my God.
We're cleaning up our language because now we're being rebroadcast on Lumpen Radio. So we're cleaning up our language.
Yeah, at least for one episode, because I just got to mail them a best of an episode. So at least for one out of the week. You know what I mean? And just like that, though, you are now in the know of what's going on in Chicago and or Illinois. And now, people, you will have an answer. The next time someone asks you, hey, what else is news?
All right, let me tell you something.
Tell me.
Something Terry Cosgrove, who will be our guest at 2:30.
Oh, hey, Terry.
Something that Terry Hanratty used to play football for Notre Dame, since we're on that Notre Dame thing.
Oh, my God. Don't run for anything political.
And something that Terry Jones, kid I went to junior high with. All agree. You did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. We'll be right back with the great Monroe Anderson after this.
The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Sun-Times. For the latest in Chicago and Illinois news, sports, weather, and the latest in national news from a real Chicago frame of mind and real Chicago writers, check out the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the daily paper or online at chicago.suntimes.com. And hey, if you have a little extra cash, subscribe. And by the Chicago Reader. For a deeper dive in the daily Chicago news and for all of what's going on in this city, you gotta read The Reader. Music, arts and culture, film, extensive event calendars, concert listings, and more, including weekly political columns from writers like Maya Dukmasova and, yes, our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader is free in newsstands and at chicagoreader.com. That's chicagoreader.com. Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show.
Yes, indeed. We're back. Monroe Anderson, as you know, is in the studio, and that means one thing: Trump, 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 Trump. The man knows more about Donald Trump than anyone alive, including Donald Trump. So, Monroe, let's get right down to business here.
I don't know as much as Mueller.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I don't. Yeah, that's true. Mueller knows more than anyone right now,
exactly,
or at least the people compiled his report. So I'm having a field day with the Mueller report. I got to tell you that. And the New York Times is making my life very easy. They did this great little cheat sheet for the Mueller report and whether Trump should be impeached.
Right.
And so Donald Trump, we had his tweets earlier today. Where he said, already he's blasting Democrats, saying I did nothing, and he wants everybody to investigate the Democrats. So here's all these items on that Mueller found that Trump did.
Yeah. Are you talking about the 10 obstructive
Yes.
actions?
Yeah.
Where he spells it out so nicely. He goes obstructive action, nexus, intent. Obstructive action, nexus, intent.
Yeah.
It goes through one after the other.
All right. So I know you've been making the rounds at other media outlets. You're become a media superstar in Donald Trump. So I have to ask you, do you think
Yes.
the Democrats I haven't even
Yes.
should impeach Donald Trump?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay,
right.
but we have a complication already. He's instructed all of his staff to ignore the subpoenas. So what he has in effect done is move the stone wall from the Mexican border, because the Mexicans refuse to pay for it, to Washington, D.C., and he's stonewalling
Very well
Congress.
done, yes. So he's instructed them to ignore congressional subpoenas.
Yes.
All right, so what does that mean?
Means he's stalling for time.
And there's going to be a showdown? It's going to be a court showdown?
Yeah, but it may be after the election, after he's been defeated, for all we know.
So
it could take that long.
If they ignore subpoenas, then these are subpoenas presumably coming from congressmen, Democratic congressmen.
Yeah, from the House Democrats.
The House Democrats. So if the staff ignores it, becomes a constitutional showdown between executive privilege, which what would be
Yeah, except some of it's not even that. I mean, this is what's so crazy about it. For example, with McCann.
McCann.
Yeah.
I have trouble
some
with that
people
one
say
too.
McCann. I've heard two pronunciations, so I'm
Yeah.
always trying to figure out which one I should use. But with McCann, because he permitted Trump permitted McCann to speak to Mueller, he can't say executive privilege now, because that's been just wiped off of the plague table.
Oh, having once allowed, well, he can always
And
change
it's
your
public-
mind.
No, and it's public knowledge now. So how can it be an executive privilege if it's in the report? You know, McCann is referred to, I think, 150 times or something in the Mueller report. He was a play caller on it. He said, "Well, you do this, and he did this, and he did that." So he can't. Well, he can try, because Trump doesn't care about the
That's
law.
the point.
He's
Yeah.
lawless.
Yeah.
I mean, he really is lawless. So he can just go, which is what he's planning on doing, is saying executive privilege. So McCann can't talk.
Right.
To
So
Congress.
even though, as you're pointing out, there is no consistency to his argument in that McCann talked already, so it's inconsistent to say he can't talk now.
Right.
Even though there's no consistency, what you do is you hire a lawyer, and the lawyer says X to, he says the sky is blue on Saturday, and then he says no, I changed my mind, the sky is really green.
See, McCann is sort of in a trick bag on this one, because he if he's subpoenaed, he doesn't want to face that problem. But on the other hand, as a Republican, he's the right wing's hero, because he loaded up the courts with all those young white conservative men, and so they love him for that. And so he's got to figure out, well, which way do I go on this? Do I risk the possibility losing my law license or something.
Well, speaking of those young lawyers that they put on the Supreme Court, there's an interesting article in the New York Times today that cites one of them, and that would be Justice Kavanaugh. We talked a lot about Justice Kavanaugh when Donald Trump nominated him. Of course, it was a very furious fight.
Oh, you mean the Brewski boy?
Yeah, Brewski boy, Brett Kavanaugh, who loves to rock and roll, or at least to when he was a teenager in Washington or suburban Maryland, wherever. Anyway, Kavanaugh once wrote a law review article where he said, reflecting on investigations of sitting presidents, Justice Kavanaugh, then a federal judge, wrote, the Constitution provides a single mechanism to address presidential misconduct. I am quoting Kavanaugh. The country needs a check against a bad behaving or law-breaking president, but the Constitution already provides that check. If the president does something dastardly, the impeachment process is available. That is Justice Kavanaugh writing.
Well, when was that?
2009.
Oh, what year is this?
2019.
10 years? A lot of things can change in 10 years.
You know what changed? The only thing that changed is that the president at the time in 2009 was a Democrat named Obama, and the president at the time in 2019 is a Republican named Trump, who put Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court.
Right. And, I mean, did you ever see the Lindsey Graham quote?
Which one?
He talked about how when they were going after Clinton, he talked about how it's not simply what a president says, that it's more than words, that a president should be impeached for his actions. And so I can't remember, but it's just the opposite, literally just the opposite of what he's saying now.
Yeah, okay. Well, they obviously, there's no principle that they're adhering to. It's strictly a matter of political survival. The Republicans have put all their money on Donald Trump and are going to stay with him because they have no choice. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
So what in your opinion is the political fallout of the Democrats' push for impeachment?
Okay. The argument as to why not to push for impeachment is that it could fire up Trump's base as if they aren't already fired up. And they will come out, and the Democrats could lose the House, Trump could win the election, and then then the country is ruined forever. I don't buy into that. I think we should start the hearings tomorrow. Don't fool around with it. Start it, and plus that would help my prediction of 4th of July.
Yeah, that prediction's not looking so good right now. We are now April 24th. Monroe predicted. What did you predict exactly?
4th of July.
Donald Trump would no longer be president?
Yeah, right.
He would have stepped down?
Either be impeached or would hightailed it out of Washington.
All right, well, that's definitely not happening.
Well, he's not definite. Definitely don't say definite.
Well, he definitely will not be voted out of office by the Senate. The Senate will not vote to remove him.
Right. It won't. No.
Not going to happen.
Exactly. But impeachment proceedings could be going on at that time.
Yeah. All right. So go back to your discussion.
So if they start the impeachment tomorrow, then they can have the hearings. And in fact, they've already subpoenaed McGahn. He just has to figure out what he's going to do. And like I said, no easy decision. But they could start calling, they could subpoena Mueller and have them on national TV where all the Americans, voters, can hear them tell the story. And then it'll be one of those situations of who you going to believe?
Richard Pryor.
Trump or your lying ears, you know.
God bless you, Richard Pryor.
Right, exactly.
Who are you going to believe?
Who stole it from Marx, one of the Marx brothers, Groucho Marx.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, I did not know that. Yeah.
Groucho Marx.
The line is, who are you going to believe? Me or your lying eyes.
Right,
yeah,
right,
okay.
exactly. So then, but you get them in there and talking about all the things that they know. You know? McCann could give them a long story about all the dirty deeds Trump was doing, and people will tune in for sure. People who are not going to read 448 pages of a report, they will watch, and some will be impacted by it. The problem is the Democrats and some Republicans talk about what happened with Clinton, and they talk about how they impeached Clinton, and Clinton came out of the impeachment more popular than when he went into it. And that could happen with Trump. But I say, first of all, with Clinton, there were no hearings. The Republicans were so anxious to impeach him, they didn't bother to call anybody in or anything. It's like, okay, blue dress.
Yeah.
What's
Well,
that
there are
white
two
stuff
separate
on that?
issues here. I mean, I actually talked about this a little bit yesterday. When you compare what Clinton's misdeeds
Right.
to Donald Trump's misdeeds, and so Bill Clinton's misdeeds were lying to cover up an affair,
Right.
So a lot of people thought that was an intrusion into his personal life. Anyway, there was both sides of the aisle. There were some
right.
thoughts like
Exactly.
And Donald Trump is talking about obstructing justice to forego an investigation, to stall an investigation on whether he was colluding with the Russians to throw the election his way,
Right.
and undercut Hillary Clinton and break into her email, and
right.
steal emails
Right.
and all kinds of things like that.
And breaking the amount. You know that with Mueller's investigation, there are 14 other investigations that have been spawned out of it, with 12 of them being sealed indictments. And so this is anything but over. Trump is in so much. That's why he's going nuts. I mean, this thing is driving him crazy because all of his life he's been able to slither out of this or slither out of that. This time they have him boxed in.
Yeah.
He's up against the wall. So another thing he's done, I don't know if you saw this or not, but he's threatening to send the armed military to the southern border. That border where the wall is.
Yeah,
that
the
the
wall.
Mexicans are not paying for it. Anyway, he's gonna, and we have these hordes of brown people trying to sneak into America. Anyway, he's threatening to send armed military down there because he claims that Mexican soldiers fired at some border patrol people. And so he's going to send our soldiers down there to shoot at those Mexican soldiers that were shooting at our soldiers.
Anything to distract from this
Anything
investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can have Spanish-American War too.
Well, the other issue that the Democrats have to face is a fear that they will look. God, this sounds so bizarre, but that they'll look too political. It'll look too political of an attack. They'll look too nasty going after Trump. I saw this argument laid out. Look too partisan. That's the word I'm searching
and
for.
that's what Trump is calling everything now, partisan. This is why he's not going to honor the subpoenas.
And so, do you think that that's a legitimate argument to be used? Like the Democrats are going to don't want to head into this election with like a partisan attack against Donald Trump. They should just pretend as though.
Oh, yeah. Of course they should do that. Just like with when the Republicans held up an appointment to the Supreme Court for a whole year. It's like they were wringing their hands, saying, "Well, should we not do this? should we let the Democrats have this seat, or what should we do? Oh dear. Well, I guess we'll run the risk of upsetting somebody by just Beauregarding the seat."
Yeah, and by the way, Nancy Pelosi, who's currently Speaker of the House, is saying she's not certain about impeachment. She doesn't want to drive. So what do you think she's up to with all that?
Oh, I think what she's doing, and this makes sense. When I talk about starting the impeachment tomorrow, there is a good argument as to you have Mueller in, and you let people hear what Mueller has to say. You get the unredacted report, and you see what's in there that's under the black marks. Then you bring him again. And at that point, then you go, oh, my God, I can't believe it. Trump did some impeachable things. we have to act on it. But many Americans have been exposed to the horrors of Trump.
Yeah, so you think she's doing like a good cop, bad cop routine,
Yes.
where she's the good cop,
Right.
And
Well, not even so much good cop, bad cop. She is thorough. She wants to do her homework. She likes to do her homework. So she wants enough on the table where the tide will start turning against Trump, which it already is. Before the Mueller report came out, Trump was at approval rating was at 42, and then it went down to 37.
no, I did not know that. I missed that one.
Right,
37.
exactly. Yep. After the Mueller report came down.
Yeah,
out.
and
And if he goes down 3 or 4 more points, this is going to be lots of Republicans going to be saying Trump who?
yeah. Well, that's an interesting point. Before I go back to Mueller, but we talked about this earlier. There's a state representative in Iowa, Andy McKean, who's a longtime Republican. He's left the Republican Party and he's become a Democrat. We talked about that earlier in the news. Dennis was reading that. But here's an interesting statistic out of Iowa.
Yeah.
Okay. So Iowa, of course, a bellwether state because it's the first referendum on the presidency. There'll be the Iowa caucus in January
Right.
of 2000. And, oh my goodness, it's right around the corner.
Exactly. Right.
81% of Republicans, follow me this, Monroe in Iowa, approve the job that Donald Trump is doing. But 40% want him to have a challenger, hope he has a challenger.
Yes.
I find that very bizarre. It's like if 81% approve of his job, why would you want him to have a challenge?
Right. You know, what else is enlightening is that, okay, the economy really is good. It's as much Obama as it is Trump, but the economy is very good. The stock market is hitting these records, et cetera. All this good stuff is going on. And still, Trump's disapproval rating is 53%. And so that tells you what a bad president he is. That he has all these things that for any other president, they'd be in the 60 or 70% approval rating because it's, all the stuff is going good.
Yeah.
And even with all that good stuff happening for him, people would say,
No, so how seriously do you take William Weld, former governor of Massachusetts, William Wells?
Well, you know, we talked about this last week, if you remember, when you had the I forget his name, and I think that William Weld will do enough damage. And now there's also talk of somebody else coming in. I think it's the former governor of Maryland, something. I can't remember his name, but he's feeling it out now. So we may have 2 or 3 challengers before it's over.
Well, the discussion we had last week, and I remember this one now, it's coming back to me. No sitting president has won re-election after being challenged.
Right.
And I could only think of a couple who would, and then people were texting in. Gerald Ford was challenged by Ronald Reagan, and George Bush was challenged by Patrick Buchanan. Oh, God, I put that one out of my mind. That was horrific indeed. And so if William Weld does run against Donald Trump, that would further weaken him. And I actually agree with you. I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here on the whole issue of impeachment.
Right.
I take it as a principle thing. I mean, I'll read you another one.
I agree. It is a principle.
I mean, these are serious allegations. Here we go. I'm just put my finger down on this one. Trump urged Comey to drop Flynn investigation. This is from the Mueller report. In February 2017, Mr. Trump cleared the Oval Office to privately discuss with James Comey, then the FBI director, his former national security advisor, Michael T. Flynn. The president said, quote, "I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go," which Mr. Comey interpreted as a direction to drop an investigation into whether Mr. Flynn had lied to the FBI about his conversation with the Russian ambassador. Mr. Trump has denied the account, which Mr. Comey detailed in contemporaneous notes and later testified about under oath. So if that's not obstruction of justice...
Oh, yeah, no, but see, Trump runs a crime family. He has run a crime family for some time. In fact, it occurred to me, now, we all love The Sopranos. Mm-hmm. Well, with Trump, they could be called the falsettos. But anyway,
Monroe and Anderson's got a million of them, ladies and gentlemen.
Anyway, what he does is he speaks like a mobster.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what if a horse's head shows up on somebody's bed, on somebody's bed tomorrow morning? Wouldn't that be horrible? Now, he didn't say, go cut off this guy's racing horse and put it on his bed. He asked the question. And then as one of his people, okay, let me go find his horse and cut its head off and put it on his bed in the morning.
Well, do you think it's a legitimate defense? I can hear this defense coming.
Yeah.
Yes, they'll say Donald Trump did want to obstruct justice, but he couldn't actually obstruct justice because his aides refused to follow his orders and commands and either said, I'm not going to do it, or just pretended the order didn't come. That will be an argument.
They've been making that argument already.
All right, so what's your reaction to that argument?
The reaction to the argument is that he came at it too many ways and too many times. I mean, it wasn't. It'd be one thing if I got mad at you and says, "We're never going to be friends again, Ben." Mm-hmm. And this is I'll never be on your show again. But then we bump into each other tomorrow. I say, well, okay, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, on the show.
On the show, right? Yeah. That's one thing. But it's another if I say I'm never going to be on your show. Our friendship is over. You call me, and I don't pick up the phone, and then I tell Dennis I'm never going to be on Ben's show again. At some point, then you have to take me seriously. Although Trump does go from one extreme to the other sometimes in two sentences.
Yeah. Yeah. In other words,
but it happened too many times in too many different ways. I mean, with the obstruction of justice, he tried to fire Mueller, and he asked one person to do it, and that person didn't. Then he called up Corey Lewandowski.
Yeah.
And he tried to get Corey to do it. Corey wasn't even working in the government at that time. But he told him, and Corey goes, well, wait a minute, this is nuts. I'm not even in the government. How can I fire somebody? So he called up somebody else.
Yeah, this is that particular accusation that I'm reading again from. In June 2017, Mr. Trump twice asked his former campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, to convey a private order to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who had recused himself from overseeing the Russian investigation. Mr. Sessions was to intervene and limit Mr. Mueller's jurisdiction to a look at preventing further election interference, ending scrutiny of Trump's campaign links to Russia in 2016, and whether Mr. Trump obstructed justice. But Mr. Lewandowski delivered neither message. Right. So essentially, Trump asked Lewandowski to force Sessions or to order Sessions to back off.
Right.
All right. So is it a legitimate? We got Ann Williams in the studio. I might ask her this question. She used to work for the Attorney General. Is it a legitimate defense to say that Trump did not, in fact, obstruct justice because Lewandowski did not convey his message to Sessions?
Again, I say that Trump's problem is that Trump is Trump. And so he has no morals, no core, and he only thinks about himself. And so he repeats himself in his crooked endeavors. So he has a track record that's very well. First of all, it's documented in the Mueller report with the 10 counts, 10 obstructive acts. And so no, he can't. He's not. I mean, he can make that argument. He could also make the. I mean, he makes all sorts of arguments that are not true. He's going to this opioid meeting today. And he stops to talk to the press, and he's talking about how great the economy. He barely mentions opioids or the problems with it.
Yeah.
He starts bragging about all the great things he's done.
All right, so now let's move from the attack on Trump and move toward what message should the Democrats be articulating? We're heading now into primary season. We're getting ready for Iowa. The candidates, there's like 17 of them. We
so
just had a
far.
new one.
Yeah.
Seth Moulton of Boston, just a congressman from Massachusetts, just announced he was running. Should the Democrats, in your humble opinion, follow the centrist lead of, like, say, a Biden or Mayor Pete and head toward the middle right now, already, just head toward the middle? Or should they go with their more radical Ben Joravsky faction of the Democratic Party, AOCs, et cetera, et cetera? What do you think is the best strategy for the Democrats to pursue as they head into
I think they should duke it out for right now. They should be walking and chewing gum at the same time.
Explain
Meaning that they should be talking about these kitchen table issues that the average American is interested in. Mm-hmm. Health care, education, that sort of thing. But they should also be on the impeachment track, exposing Trump every which way they can. Mm-hmm. They can do both. The committees in the House can do the investigations. The candidates out in the field can talk about all the wonderful things they would do that Trump's not doing. And they'll get asked about the impeachment periodically. But once the hearings start, they'll be able to put a spotlight on what McGahn said or what Mueller said about something. And so they can do it both.
All right, very good. And speaking of kitchen table issues, State Representative Ann Williams has entered the building. We're going to bring her on. She's going to talk about a Clean Energy Jobs Bill, a Clean Energy Jobs Act right here in the state of Illinois. There's some kitchen table aspects to that legislation, which we'll be talking about when we return.
Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times Online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader Online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show, J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m., live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show. If you would like to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, and who wouldn't, contact Tracy Baim at publisher@chicagoreadercorp.com. We have several advertising options for your business or organization, and quite frankly, we would love nothing more than to tell our listeners all about it. Once again, that's Tracy Baim at publisher@chicagoreadercorp, that's C-O-R-P as in Paul.com, to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, the Chicago Reader, and the Chicago Sun-Times. We look forward to plugging you. Okay, well, that came out kind of weird. More of the Ben Joravsky Show live and downloaded in moments. everybody. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, April 24th is just moments away. But before we get into hour number 2, we would like to thank the following unions for helping bring back the Ben Joravsky Show. You guys are great. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, not Aerosmith, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board here and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show would not be possible without our friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Wednesday, April 24th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we still got Monroe Anderson in studio. We welcome Illinois State Rep Ann Williams, and Ben, put on your big boy pants, President and CEO of Personal Pack, Terry Cosgrove. And now your host, President and CEO of Nothing, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. Terry Cosgrove will be in the studio in a little while. He's always bossing me around. I'm sure he'll be bossing me around again.
I love it when he comes and he bosses you around.
Yeah, and Ann Williams in the studio, Monroe Anderson. Ann Williams, by the way, my state representative, okay? My very own state representative. So we're going to have a lot of things to talk about with Ann, and Monroe is sitting here as well. You have an update for me, young man?
Absolutely, I do. Your state representative? Oh,
Yes.
my God, let me clean up around
Yeah,
here.
I know.
My
Clean
goodness,
the
so
place
sorry.
up.
Oh,
It's our
man.
very own
A
state.
clean office.
Clean
so
office.
sorry.
In
Yeah.
studio.
Yeah.
All right, we have a quick 2020 Democratic presidential candidate update here. Well, sort of. Oh, this crazy news cycle in 2019. This is more of a story about another news organization just looking to get the story first rather than get it right. Today, the Washington Examiner reported that family members of the late Senator John McCain will endorse the guy who hasn't even officially announced that he's running for president in 2020, former Vice President Joe Biden. Joe Biden is rumored to be making his presidential candidacy official tomorrow, Thursday, by the way. And according to this report, the McCain family is preparing to break with the Republican Party and endorse Joe Biden. Well, McCain's wife, Sidney McCain, saw these reports, and she's calling BS. Fake news, says Sidney McCain. Sidney McCain has since issued a statement denying the news of her family endorsing Joe Biden.
Yeah, you gotta get it right there, folks. Who Washington? Well, it wasn't the Washington Post; it was the Washington Examiner.
Yeah, which
It's that right wing.
Yeah, very
right wing rag. Yeah, they're always trying to trash John McCain. Although I would have nothing but respect for the McCain family if they left Trump, and I don't blame them if they do. So much. All the things that Donald Trump has said about John McCain down through the years.
Yeah,
despicable.
Barbara Bush voted Democratic.
Yeah, but I don't know if she went public with it.
No, she didn't.
Yeah.
She said something about it.
Did she? Barbara Bush say
I
something about
remember
it?
saying or posting on Facebook, "I'm with Barbara," whatever it was.
She
was on Choice, actually.
was in Choice. Yeah, I would not be surprised if McCain's privately voted for whoever the Democrats put up, particularly if it's Joe Biden, because Biden was friends with John McCain.
Right.
But you got to get it right. It looks like they're trying to muddy her up, dirty her up. All right, Ann Williams, 11th Rep District State Representative, my state representative. Welcome back to the new show.
I love the new show. I am so excited to be here.
Thank you, Ann, and nice little digs here.
It's great.
All right,
We
now
have a piano there if you want.
yeah, if you want
if I
to
want to
start
break into
song or
Yeah, I
something.
might.
All right, and before I start asking you about the Clean Energy Jobs Act bill and some of the other issues in Springfield right now, just got to get your thoughts as a Democrat, as a person who's had to go door to door and try to talk voters into voting. And now you're in a very safe district for Democrats, I might add. But I'm just curious, do you think it's politically, put aside the issue, well, let's deal with morality and then we'll deal with politics. Do you think the evidence you've seen in the Mueller report, articles about the Mueller report, et cetera, would lead you to say that Donald Trump should be impeached for obstruction of justice?
Well, I have to admit I haven't read the full report, but from what I've heard, where there's smoke, there's fire. I definitely feel that Trump, in addition to the abysmal way he's run the country, in addition to his inappropriate rhetoric and everything else, I don't have time to go into everything that he does daily to embarrass us as a nation. I'm concerned, frankly, about his commitment to our country and that it's not just about him. Everything I've seen is about him. It's about his ego. It's about his I don't know. It's all about him. And I think when you are that kind of person and you look at the presidency with a cavalier attitude, there's probably something a little bit more there we need to look into.
Oh, you were in the were you? Wait, I don't know if this is true. Were you in the State House when the legislators impeached Blagojevich?
I was not in, but I worked around the Capitol at that time, so I remember kind of the frenzy around it.
All right. And so politically, do you think it would be dangerous for Democrats to go after Trump to force an impeachment? Do you think that they should be more cautious and stay away from that from political considerations, not a moral or ethical ones?
You know, I'm concerned about moving forward for the next election. I don't know how many candidates we have now, did you say? Or?
I think there's 17. Don't quote me on
Okay.
that.
Well,
I'd have to
a
count them
lot.
up. Yeah, a lot.
But, you know, I want to focus on the future. I'm not saying we shouldn't look at an impeachment, but how much time and energy are we going to put into that versus coming together as a party, choosing the right candidate that we think can beat this guy and moving forward in that direction. So for me, I want to look toward the future and focus on that. It doesn't preclude the possibility that if he's done something impeachment worthy, he should be impeached. Do we have the time and resources and energy and ability to do that before the election? I'm not sure about that.
All right, well, let's talk about something that the Democrats might want to run on. You have your Clean Energy Jobs Act. We talked about this last week. I think Ed Maher was in the studio talking about this. Give folks a little more information. Exactly what is the Clean Energy Jobs Act?
Sure. This is a very comprehensive piece of legislation which would grow our green economy and provide for equity throughout these efforts. So basically, there's 4 pillars to this bill. First of all, we're looking to create jobs in the green economy, particularly focusing on communities of color, underserved communities, both in urban areas and downstate that have been negatively impacted by, in industry and polluters. Secondly, our goal is to get us on a path to carbon-free power sector by 2030, move forward for a renewables-only private power sector by 2050, and finally really focus on the electrification of the transportation sector. So that breaks down to things like fleet vehicles for municipalities, buses, trains, not using fossil fuels, and significantly improving emissions.
All right, talk about. Let's start with the last one first. Electrification of cars that are used by municipalities. Would this require that?
Well, this doesn't require it, but it does provide incentives for communities that do that and kind of sets the stage and creates an infrastructure for more utilization of electric vehicles. So I mentioned earlier the equity piece. That is a common theme. Let me take a step back and explain how this bill evolved. As you might recall, a couple of years ago, Illinois passed the Future Energy Jobs Act, and the group I was involved with was the Clean Jobs Coalition. Basically did a lot of work to improve the ability of solar and wind companies to develop in Illinois, and it was wildly successful. Too successful because the demand is greater than what we can serve as a state. So this is kind of the follow-up to that piece. This is called the Clean Energy Jobs Act. And for the past year, members of the Clean Energy Coalition have gone around the state, downstate, urban areas, all through the state, meeting with community members, advocacy organizations, stakeholders, energy contractors, companies, to kind of get a sense of what we need to do in the renewable world, what we need to do to improve our ability to create jobs in this sector, and get just feedback. The result is this 300-some page bill, which is a very comprehensive approach to looking at growing the green economy. And I couldn't be more excited to be working on this bill. Of course, like everything in Springfield, it will require negotiations with some of the other stakeholders, but this is a great starting point for discussion, and I think a lot of the provisions of this bill will bring great benefits to Illinois, not just for addressing climate change and environmental issues, but job creation, economic development, and public health benefits.
All right, when you talk about negotiations with some of the other stakeholders, get a little more specific. Who are the stakeholders that you'll be negotiating with, and what are the issues that will be negotiated?
Sure. Well, this bill is, like I said, a comprehensive approach which includes a little something for everyone in it. There's another initiative out there that deals with solar companies' investment, and it's a little bit different of approach, but it requires more investment in renewable energy credits to spur development of solar opportunities. So some of the solar companies are involved with the coalition. Others are working on this kind of different approach. Of course, there's always Exelon, who owns the nuclear plants, and the distributor, which is ComEd. Of course, they're all the players. Ameren is our downstate version of ComEd. So those are just some of the parties that are relevant in Springfield, have asks of Springfield. And when one person has an ask and another person has an ask, often you have to come together and figure out how much of each ask will end up being in the final product.
And so renewable energy credits, you trotted that out. What exactly is a renewable energy credit?
That's an opportunity to ensure that solar companies have a chance to participate in the provision of power in Illinois. So by investing in these credits, you give companies the ability to participate in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. Our bill focuses on several areas which will improve our ability to create increased renewable energy development in Illinois. One of those areas is in something called the capacity market. Not sure how to quickly explain it, but basically, right now we procure power from the PJM market, and we have to follow the rules that are established by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and how we procure that power. And there's all kinds of rules that we have to abide by to ensure that we are able to get enough power to keep the lights on at peak times. So the coldest day in winter, the warmest day in summer, we have to have enough capacity to reach that. Right now, we utilize this broader market. I don't remember what it stands for, PGM. It goes all the way across the country. Mm-hmm. But we have to follow the rules established at the federal level. Well, you and I both know that at the federal level, they're not too concerned about carbon emissions, and in fact are going in the wrong direction when it comes to climate change. So what we would like to do on the state level is modify the way we handle the capacity market by ensuring that Illinois can set its own standards for procuring that energy. So we can require a mix of clean energy that can be renewables, solar, wind, and nuclear does fall into a non-carbon emitting source of power. So if we're able to move forward, we'll not only save money because these are more cost-efficient measures, and eventually will be much cheaper than providing traditional powers, but we will procure power in Illinois using the values that are important to Illinois, and that is, preserving our environment, reducing carbon emissions.
All right, I could see objections on two fronts based on what you just said. Number one, as you said, in the federal level, where for his own reasons, Donald Trump remains just completely opposed to anything that vaguely resembles solar energy, for instance. He mocks it and makes fun of it all the time, right, Monroe? Yeah, Obama was for it. That's his problem. And then the second one is that any bill or law or provision that the state passes that encourages more people to, let's say, use solar may cut into some other company's profits, and so they would have an incentive to be against your bill. So how do you deal with those two fronts?
Well, I'll start with the second piece that you mentioned, which is you're probably referring to coal. Well, it's interesting. There's a company called Vistra that used to be Dynegy, I believe, that is the big coal plant owner in Illinois. And I don't remember the guy's name, but the head of Vistra, I think, has used the term inevitable in terms of the phasing out of carbon-emitting coal plants. Mm-hmm. Everyone who has studied or worked in the sector understands that coal is going away. It's just a matter of time. It's not efficient. We can't sustain the production of coal in a cost-effective manner. It's just a matter of fact, and whether the president chooses to acknowledge this is a whole different story. He doesn't seem to base much of anything on facts. But I'll say that, one of the things that this bill does that's so exciting is instead of just leaving the market to its own devices and a coal plant closing downstate in some town which relies on that coal plant, leaving them quite literally in the dust with piles of coal ash everywhere, and those people with no jobs, no recourse, this bill deliberately phases out the carbon-emitting coal plants, and it provides for clean energy empowerment zones that ensure that where there's clean energy development, It happens in places where we have the workforce and in communities that have been negatively impacted by these changes, whether it's environmental impacts or the closure of these coal plants, which can happen abruptly. It can be open one day, close the next. This bill plans and provides for the futures of those towns. That's something we did very deliberately.
Okay, a question for me. You have somebody who's
Wait. There we go.
okay. You have somebody who's a coal miner. That's all he's done. His father did that before him. His grandfather before him. How do you teach them or educate them to do something in the clean energy sector?
It's like we planted that question. Because we have.
It's where they didn't even know each other before they.
He's not reading my notes. But that's a great question, Monroe. And that's one of the 4 pillars of the bill is job creation. And it provides for a focus on training, whether it's a coal miner in Southern Illinois or someone that maybe was a foster care alumni or someone that didn't have the opportunities in a community in an urban area that's been disproportionately impacted by pollution. There are workforce job hubs that are created. There are training programs going now as we speak from the first bill that we'd like to really ramp up and amplify. I just left a editorial board meeting with a pastor who is working on some of these cohorts for training in the Chicagoland area. And there is a specific training. We're not just training you and then putting you out in the street. These are trainings that are developed for the specific job. So that coal miner that you referenced would be getting specific training about the installation and monitoring and facilitating the solar farms, for example, or something like that. So it's very specific training, and these folks are able to and excited about opportunities, and we just need to present it to them and put the infrastructure in place to make it happen.
So when you say solar farm, explain to people what a solar farm is.
Well, interestingly, solar farm is just like a wind farm. It's a series of, in this case, solar panels versus wind turbines that are placed whatever size, land you want to put it on, which provide for the generation of power, which is then connected to the grid and distributed to use in our homes and businesses. So what's interesting about solar farms is they go very well on former polluted sites, sites that may never be suitable for a school or a home, but might work very well for a solar farm. You don't need to clean it up to that level.
But didn't the president say that they give you cancer?
Oh, that's true. Was it the windmills? Or which,
No, I think it's windmills that give you.
The windmills.
Wait, hold on. Here we go.
If you have a windmill anywhere near your house, congratulations.
Loading up. Hang tight. Give me a second.
Yeah.
The greatest equipment.
That was the infamous quote from Donald Trump. But
here we go.
Oh, here we go.
If you have a windmill anywhere near your house, congratulations. Your house just went down 75% in value. And they say the noise causes cancer. You told me that one, okay?
That's our president, ladies and
This
gentlemen.
guy is unbelievable.
Yeah, he's
I can't-
unbelievable. I think we should impeach him tomorrow. Anyway,
Fine.
just for that alone, because, I mean, the obstruction of justice in the Mueller report, I can go on and on about, but I think the far greater consequence, Ann Williams and Monroe, is that he is just blindly battling any attempt by our country to deal with the environmental fallout of years and years of dependence on fossil fuel. And I'm watching, there's this talk about like the floodwaters coming up over Miami, and he just continues to mock and malign and trivialize all these important issues. And here you are, you have these detailed plans, you're very rationally explaining them, you're answering Monroe's questions, you're answering my questions, you're being very diplomatic about all the people, stakeholders are on the other side, and then Donald Trump just steps up and just throws it all out the window, mocking and maligning. How do you deal with that?
Well, the stuff that comes out of his mouth is shocking, and I never cease to be amazed by it. I guess I have a little bit of, this term that I feel like I've coined, maybe you've heard it elsewhere, but I'm taking credit for outrage fatigue. So I've felt, you feel outraged how many times a day about the latest thing that Trump does or says or some policy. But at some point, you're like exhausted by all the outrage. You can't be outraged about everything all the time. So this is a good way to put your energy to good use and to put some of that outrage into good use. And whether it's, Ben, I've talked to you before about many issues, but whether it's this, whether it's an environmental issue, whether it's reproductive health care, whether it's immigrant and refugee rights, whether it's data security, the Trump administration has been abysmal in every one of these areas. So one of our jobs on the state level is now to figure out where we can make a difference on the state level to fight back. And so that's where I've spent a lot of my energy and time since 2016.
And so, all right, when Donald Trump used that kind of rhetoric, what kind of impact does it have in the General Assembly of Illinois? Do you hear some of your colleagues of the Republican persuasion echoing back what Donald Trump has said, mocking the whole notion that we need clean energy?
We are a bit behind in terms of being educated on the issues surrounding clean energy as a General Assembly. Of course, we have our environmental champions, and the numbers of those are growing every year. We have others that are starting to come around to value clean energy and renewables because they understand there are very robust business investments for our state. They bring great returns to Illinois. But we have some people that they don't listen to reason. They're not looking at the numbers and the economic benefits. Clean energy jobs are growing at a rate, I learned today, 5 times greater than other jobs. So this is the future. This is not just good for the economy and health and the environment. It's good for the finances. But, they don't want to see it. We have a few colleagues. Have you heard the reference to the Eastern Bloc?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's about 5 or 6 people that seem to pride themselves on being let's see, I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. I don't think they're listening, Ben.
Yeah.
I think they almost pride themselves on being ignorant of these issues. Yeah. It's almost like a source of pride. And that was not like that before Trump. This is a new breed of conservative that I can't really put my finger on it, but it feels different.
Eastern Bloc, actually, I was thinking of something else. What exactly is the Eastern Bloc that you're alluding to?
It's there's a group of, I don't know if I want to let them be known by their name because they're taking a little bit of, they're running with it and I don't think it's very productive. But it's a group of about 5 or 6 of my colleagues on the Republican side who are from the eastern part of the state and do pride themselves on being as conservative as possible, even when it's maybe not in the best interest of the state as a whole.
I see.
When you point out that China is now producing 40% of the screens,
the solar
panels, what's their response, or they don't care?
I think they are so on, and I'm not just talking about these specific individuals. I think the people that aren't wanting to hear this message just don't want to hear it. No matter how much sense we make, how many statistics we have. We have, even companies like Walmart, who are not exactly companies that I'm traditionally aligned with and, for other issues, they even utilize solar panels on their roof because it's more cost efficient and it's better for business. So there is a bit of a disconnect, if I'm explaining that right, between the realities of renewables and the benefits of renewables beyond the obvious environmental issues. There's just unwillingness to see what an important part of the world.
Well, we've seen this. We were talking about this earlier, Monroe. Some of the Republicans who are rising up to run against Lauren Underwood in the 14th Congressional District and Sean Cassidy in the 6th Congressional District are sort of trying to radicalize the Democratic Party, make it seem like it's an extremist party that's in the hands of socialists. That's their new way. Socialists who want to destroy free enterprise. And I have the sense that any kind of legislation like the one you're proposing will immediately be distorted by that lens. And that's what you're going to have to fight when you're in Springfield right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's a comparison that's made. Oh, this is just like the Green New Deal in D.C., and it's actually quite of a different approach. It's not weighing in on that. I haven't closely examined it, but this is a very pragmatic approach. It's a natural next step to the work we've already done in conjunction with all the stakeholders to improve the clean energy economy and development of renewables in Illinois. It's just a practical solution.
All right, that's State Representative Ann Williams. Monroe Anderson is here. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times Online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader Online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. Jora, V as in victory, SKY. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, indeed, we are live. Monroe Anderson has left the building or is leaving the building. The great Monroe Anderson is leaving the building. He managed to get through his entire hour segment here in the show without swearing once.
All right.
Oh, wait, is that a thing? We're not supposed to? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, you can't. I mean, we are podcasting, so you're allowed-
Right, that's, I'm unleashed.
Yeah, you're
I think I'm going to take off, too.
But we part of the show is put on radio, so we have to worry about it. But then, you know what? Don't worry about it, TC. If you want to drop the F-bomb,
No, I'm not
to your
gonna
little
do
heart's
that.
desire.
I have to maintain some decorum.
All right, very good. Terry Cosgrove, when I had my old show, was on all the time, at least once a month, maybe once every 6 weeks. And he, of course, is the executive director of Personal PAC, the leading reproductive rights group, or one of the leading reproductive rights groups in the state of Illinois. The man knows more about reproductive rights and the politics of reproductive rights than anyone in the universe. And he's on the show right now. So welcome to our news show.
Thank you. It looks great.
Yeah, doesn't
this is
it?
amazing. And Dennis is right here. I mean,
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, he's right there. And Ann Williams is sitting right next to me.
Williams,
We'll let her
one
leave
of
the
our
room.
leaders in the house, and I'm so glad to sit next to her. I'm honored.
Yes.
I am too, Terry.
All right.
Always.
So we're going to switch topics from. Wait, before I do though, Ann Williams. Before we leave completely the all-important topic of of your legislation. If people want to get more information about the Clean Energy Jobs Act, or if they want to participate in lobbying for it to overcome the Eastern Bloc's opposition and President Trump's opposition to anything that's sane in regards to the environment, is there any where can they go to get involved?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question. We have a great website that provides opportunities to get involved. It's ilcleanjobs.org, and that will give you links to more information, how to take action, etc. So again, that's ilcleanjobs.org.
All right, very good. Thank you much about
You got
that.
it.
All right, let's switch gears to reproductive rights. Oh my goodness. Illinois women can't wait another day for the Reproductive Health Act to become law. This is from Personal Pact. I'm reading that, Terry, you brought in. All right, let's start with this. The Reproductive Health Act, although there's so many other matters on this issue, Terry, across the country, reproductive rights, I mean, are under siege. So before we get into Illinois, let's just run down what's going on. It's been a while since you and I have had a conversation on the air. We've had a few conversations off the air. Usually,
Right.
But I'll tell you what, Terry Cosgrove can be a little critical of a reporter every now and then, but we'll leave that.
I'm just honest.
Okay, all right.
And I do apologize when I'm wrong, though.
Yes, you
right?
do apologize.
Don't I? Didn't I?
We'll leave all
Upon
that
review.
off the record.
I
Upon
must have missed
review.
something.
Yes, no,
Yeah,
it's
you are missing
inside Ben and Terry talk.
yeah.
But all right, let's talk about some what's going on around the country. So, folks,
Well, I'm going to need Ann's help on this because, to be honest, it's hard to keep up on a daily basis what's going on. I know that Georgia has passed a bill that would basically outlaw all abortions, and the really good thing about that is that, and I was waiting for this to happen, is there's now a boycott going on by major corporations of Georgia because this bill is so right-wing. And Governor Pritzker I saw an article in Crain's last week or the week before saying, come to Illinois, we're a much more tolerant state. And actually, on the way over here in the cab, I was thinking about it, thinking maybe that's Illinois tourism, or come to Illinois and work and live, because we are a state that has marriage equality. We have access to a full range of reproductive health care, at least for now we do. And so people to come here. So a week ago, the Texas legislature actually debated a bill that would give women the death penalty, put to death for having an abortion. I know that Ohio has passed.
Wait, hold on. We can't let that one just escape.
I know.
mean,
It's hard to believe.
It's hard to believe it.
Dystopian.
Dystopian stuff. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. So you're
the
telling
handmaids
me
on steroids.
Yeah.
you're telling me there's language in the bill. I've not heard about this or not read about it. Actually, I should say there's language in a bill that would require the death penalty for a woman who has an abortion. Is that what you're
and
telling
a
me?
doctor. Yeah. And anyone that would assist with it. So in other words, you would be an accomplice to a murder if you help someone get to a doctor's office or whatever. Yeah.
And what happened with this bill?
And do you have an update?
I don't remember what happened.
I don't. It was
I'll look it up.
introduced. It was being debated, and that's the last I lost of it.
see.
Now, and part of the problem, Ben, when you bring this up is I don't, I can be accused of exaggeration, but on this, I'm not.
No.
It barely a day goes by where I don't see something on some social media feed or a news feed about another law that's being enacted that is stripping women of their reproductive health care, assaults on birth control. It's not even just abortion, I don't mean it that way, but it's on birth control, it's on IVF, it's on a whole range of activities, not to mention the whole issue of the Catholic Church continuing to clamp down on. I was just reading an article this morning that there was a hospital in somewhere where the hospital was ignoring the Catholic Church's ethos on birth control. They found out about it and they stopped the hospital from giving. I just read it a few hours ago. So it is a ongoing assault that's going on. And do you know of any other states, Ann? I know
you mentioned
Iowa.
Ohio. Did you say Ohio?
Ohio did a heartbeat bill, which means
What's a heartbeat bill?
Well, a heartbeat. The anti-choicers claim that that there's a heartbeat in a fetus at 6 weeks or 2 weeks even now they're claiming, and when that can be determined that there is a heartbeat, that abortion would be illegal. Now the problem with that is most women don't even realize they're pregnant at 2 weeks or 6 weeks, so it's basically a ban on abortion. and very few procedures take place that soon in a pregnancy for medical reasons anyways that don't, except the morning after pill, and which is not an abortion, it's a prevention, and then the abortion pill is taken in earlier in pregnancy. So it's going on all over the country. People have to be very afraid about what's going on.
Well, there's at least 2 other states that have done the
Go ahead,
so-called
Ian.
heartbeat bill, and that's Mississippi and Kentucky. And as far as the fate of the bill in Texas on the death penalty, that did fail or didn't progress, but there's other bills just as onerous, and one wonders if they didn't put that out there to get the outrage focused on that so they could go ahead and pass bills that would basically ban abortion.
Is that a tactic that the anti-abortion forces use? Put something completely and totally outrageous out there, and so as a compromise, Democrats or people who are pro-choice move more to the right?
Yes, I certainly think in some states that would definitely be a tactic. And I think the larger issue here is all these bills are being introduced in the states. Like a month ago, there were 12 bills that were in the federal pipeline that would challenge Roe. Now it's over 20. So as these, and they're increasing literally by the week. There'll be more. I wouldn't be surprised by the time the term starts with the Supreme Court. It's 30 or 40 bills that will be in the pipeline for the court to consider to overturn Roe.
So in other words, explain to people how this works. A federal bill that leads to the overturning of Roe. Explain that to people how one leads to the other.
These various bills that are passing in the states, a lawsuit is filed against them, usually by the ACLU. And if there is disagreement, and Ann's the attorney here, so I feel like I'm stepping out of my league here. But the rule is if 2 federal courts agree, then the Supreme Court is unlikely to take the case. So if 2 federal courts disagree, then that means the court almost has to take the case. So if like the 7th Circuit upholds the law and the 9th Circuit would strike it down, then that's almost assured that it's going to go to the Supreme Court. Am I correct on that, Ann?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And one other thing about back to the Texas death penalty and all these others that really criminalized abortions or assistance is the rhetoric that surrounds this. So part of it, I think, is a deliberate attempt by the anti-choice faction to build up the negativity around it, build up the extreme rhetoric, get public opinion to get ginned up on these issues, and create fear in the hearts of women that are seeking abortions, in young women that don't have access to resources, to have health care providers think twice about whether they want to go down this road. The few that remain to provide abortions are subject to even more scrutiny by friends, neighbors, church members, et cetera. So I think it's part of a deliberate attempt to talk about abortion in a way that's just not reality. The reality is abortion is about health care. It's a woman's choice on how to move forward with her body and how to move forward with her reproductive future. And it's being talked about as something much different.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. It's a way of intimidating people. Now, Terry, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, so in other words, one of these, so here's the tactic, as I understand you're laying it out. Those folks, those legislators who are vehemently opposed to a woman's right to choose, reproductive rights, introduce a bill that's outrageous. It's challenged by the ACLU or Planned Parenthood or whoever. And one court overturns it, another court upholds it. It goes to the Supremes, and the issue is Roe v. Wade. And they say, and they overturn Roe v. Wade. What are the consequences at that point?
Well, the consequences are that it will, prior to Roe v. Wade, it was up to each individual state to set their own abortion laws. Mm-hmm. And so New York legalized, I think, in 69 or 70. Roe v. Wade was 1973. Wisconsin and Hawaii came in shortly thereafter. So those were the 3 states where abortion was legal prior to Roe. I might not be exactly correct on that. Again, I'm not a lawyer, and that was 46 years ago when I was a little younger than I am.
Terry, 46. That's why in the rocks. Yeah, you were hanging out by the beach. Yeah, okay.
Not quite.
Not quite.
I didn't even live here. No.
Okay.
So at any rate, very funny bit. Yeah. So now I got out. So back to being serious for a minute, Mr. Joravsky.
Yeah,
So what that would mean is that by by overturning Roe v. Wade, that means that it would then be likely. This is a likely scenario that I think most legal scholars agree with, is that then it would then be up to each individual state to set the parameters of legal abortion. So you would have states, the 3 states on the West Coast would very likely keep it legal, and there's probably half a dozen states on the East Coast that would. And then you have the middle of the country, and basically Illinois is the only place where that would be the case. However, because
where it would be legal.
Where it would be legal. However, we have all of these onerous restrictions from the 1970s that were enacted when Illinois was one of the most anti-choice states in the country.
Isn't that hard to believe?
Yeah.
That
Well,
the development of Illinois in that regard.
Right. It is, but in 1975, and this is why people need to listen very closely, because this is getting down to the nuts and bolts of this. We have things like spousal consent, which means a married woman would have to get her husband's written permission to get an abortion. That law was enjoined, means stopped from being enforced. So in other words, a married woman doesn't have to get her husband's permission today to have an abortion. But if Roe is overturned, I can guarantee you within 35 seconds, Peter Breen will be in federal court asking that injunction to be removed that was based on Roe, to have that injunctions lifted, so then a married woman in Illinois would need her husband's
Peter
permission.
Breen is a former state representative
Yes.
who is vehemently opposed to
Yes.
abortion rights.
Yeah, he heads up the legal Thomas
More.
legal, and they do basically all the legal the opposition to reproductive rights. We also have 24-hour waiting periods, misinformed consent, which means that doctors are required to read anti-choice propaganda, lying to women about abortion, and saying that if you have an abortion you'll get breast cancer, and which is very insulting, and it's not founded anywhere in science or medicine.
They will be required.
Yeah. There is the laws that have passed in other states like Pennsylvania and tons of other states, and we call it misinformed consent. A doctor is told it's part of the whole consent for the consent that you sign. If they sit you down and they tell you what's, and the doctor has to read the state mandated information that has no basis in science. Has no basis in reality, and they read you a litany of things, and all of it is done to dissuade a woman from having the abortion. So they tell her all these lies. You're unlikely to ever get pregnant again. You'll get breast cancer. You'll be depressed and all this other stuff. Even though most, like 95% of women report how relieved they feel when it's over, and they're able to go on in time, space, and plan their pregnancies from there.
What about the First Amendment rights of doctors? Good God, talk about intrusive government.
I know, it doesn't exist. I know.
You're always yapping about First Amendment rights.
I know.
Where's my libertarian friends? Hiding under the table as always.
So
that's...
one way to think about it, and Terry has explained this to me many times, is that if Roe versus Wade were to fall, and I hate saying if, it feels like when now.
Yeah.
It is
but
when.
when that happens, Illinois and all other states would immediately go back to where we were Roe versus Wade. So that means all this stuff that was on the books in the 70s when abortion was illegal would be revived. And that's what we'd have to methodically, one by one, try and work to change the laws to bring them up to modern medicine and modern psychology and understanding of life now, and that's that. Why can't we do that now? And that's what we're trying to do in Illinois right now. We're trying to ensure that when that happens, we'll be prepared, and Illinois women will be able to proceed with their health care needs uninterrupted.
And 24-hour waiting periods, that's mandatory.
Yes.
So if a woman comes to a clinic to get an abortion, they have to immediately say, well, you got to wait 24 hours from this point on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And
by law.
Yes, by law. And for those of us that live in the Chicago area, it's like pharmacist refusing to fill a prescription for birth control or the morning after pill. Well, there's probably 5 Walgreens and CVS's within 2 blocks of where we are right now. When you're in downstate Illinois, there are women that have to travel over 200 miles in downstate Illinois to get an abortion. If you're punching a time clock at a factory, you have 2 kids at home, you have childcare to be concerned about, not to mention if you're a young woman, a high school student or something, and you have to travel 200 miles to not be able to turn around and go home after the procedure, but you have to sit in a hotel overnight until the next
can't
day.
afford.
That you can't afford. First of all, you can't afford the transportation. You're scraping together the money for the procedure, and now you have to sit in a hotel for 24 hours. And a lot of states have 48 and 72-hour waiting periods. I mean, we have 24 here. So like all of these restrictions, rural women, low-income women, and young women are the most impacted by all of these restrictions.
All right, so Terry, there's something called the Reproductive Health Act. Illinois women can't wait another day for the Reproductive Health Act to become law. What would the Reproductive Health Act do?
Well, it would repeal all of these things that we've discussed. That's on the piece of paper in front of you. And, there was confusion about HB 40.
I was just going to ask you that question.
And I have like a standard email now that I'm sending to people who email me. I just had lunch with someone who asked me, I thought HB 40
Yeah,
took
I thought
care of
I was
that.
just going to ask you that
no,
question.
No,
What
no.
happened?
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
I had a woman.
Wait, time out. Just so everybody remembers, HB 40, we talked about it many, many times. Terry Cosgrove and myself, HB 40 was a bill that your good friend, Governor Bruce Rauner, signed. Did he not, Terry?
Bruce Rauner. I don't remember.
Your old good friend. The Rauner.
No, he did do the right thing on that. I have to give it to him. The problem is he lied about it for a year and told everyone, lied to everyone about it and caused him trouble. And
well, Terry,
and you and I go around. Had he just done it at the beginning and did what he said he would do, he probably wouldn't.
All right. So what did HB 40?
So HB 40, related to this, it got rid of the restriction on Medicaid funding for abortion and state employees' health insurance. So putting that aside, the third thing it did is got rid of the trigger law, and all it did is remove one sentence that was in the statute that said that the day Roe v. Wade is overturned, abortion becomes illegal in Illinois. And all it did was brought us to a neutral point. So now we don't have a explicit prohibition on abortion, but we don't have anything that says it's the policy of the state of Illinois that abortion would be a legal medical procedure. What this bill does, in addition to repealing all this stuff, it has language in it that says it's the policy of the state of Illinois that abortion is a legal medical procedure. So we need that because when Roe is overturned, there can be no ambiguity. Right now, because we don't have any affirmative language, it's very likely that Peter Breen could go into court and argue that that since there's no explicit language, we should outlaw abortion. Now, would he get away with that? I don't know. But had there been, or if there is affirmative language, there's not a prayer in the world that women will be protected in Illinois if that affirmative language exists, which is in this bill. And then by repealing all of this bad stuff, we're then basically on this neutral ground that just affirms abortion as a private medical decision between a woman or a doctor.
And has this bill, the Reproductive Health Act, been actually introduced already?
Yes, it has been introduced, and we have, when the General Assembly goes back next Tuesday, we have exactly 5 weeks to pass it in the House and get it over to the Senate. Simple majority.
In both houses, because I presume Governor Pritzker, this governor, would sign this bill, correct?
Yes, I think that assumption is about as correct as you can get. But I mean, as a matter of protocol, I am not in a position to say with 1,000% certainty. I mean, it's just, you just don't do that. I mean, but I
don't assume until you
don't. Yes, right. And I am confident that Governor Pritzker.
All right. So who has introduced this bill?
Kelly Cassidy, one of your favorites,
Casey,
my state representative.
girl,
Ann is
Kelly
a co-sponsor, so we have to give a shout out to Ann here, and it has close to 40 co-sponsors.
And in the Senate,
that we have it. This House bill will go over to the Senate once it passes the House. So there's a bill, there's a version of it there, but we're not using that vehicle. We're using the House vehicle. And then there's,
And are you confident? Are you nervous as you approach this bill? Do you feel that you should rally people?
Yes, I am very nervous because I have to tell you, the anti-choicers, I mean, there's been this odd kind of reverse effect after the 2016 elections. The pro-choice side, our side, the progressive side, was all riled up and came out in 2018 and did some amazing things. Elected 68 pro-choice state representatives in the House, elected Sean Casten, Lauren Underwood, and Nancy Pelosi is now Speaker of the House. The result of that election means that what happens on our side all the time, people have gone to sleep. and the right wing is really riled up. So the reason I'm here, Ben, not just because I think you're a wonderful radio interview and I adore you and Dennis and Ann, is to really get across to everyone listening. You need to pick up the phone and call your state representative and say, you have to vote for the Reproductive Health Act. I mean, we need an outcry from every single pro-choice person in the state. It doesn't matter if Ann Williams is your state rep, call her anyways. Because,
Go ahead and call me anytime.
Yeah. Or Kelly Cassidy, but especially there's a whole bunch of legislators in Springfield that, are really getting beat up by the other side, and we need to reinforce their position that they support this. So,
all right, that's Terry Cosgrove saying why this is so important. Take a little break. We come back. I'm going to ask him the R question, Republican question. Are there any Republicans anywhere near the state of Illinois that support Reproductive Health Act? The Reproductive Health Act. We'll be right back with Terry Cosgrove and Ann Williams after this.
The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Sun-Times. For the latest in Chicago and Illinois news, sports, weather, and the latest in national news from a real Chicago frame of mind and real Chicago writers, check out the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the daily paper or online at chicago.suntimes.com. And hey, if you have a little extra cash, subscribe. And by the Chicago Reader. For a deeper dive in the daily Chicago news and for all of what's going on in this city, you gotta read The Reader. Music, arts and culture, film, extensive event calendars, concert listings, and more, including weekly political columns from writers like Maya Dukmasova and, yes, our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader is free in newsstands and at chicagoreader.com. That's chicagoreader.com. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
All right, that super cool music means we're almost done, but it's a podcast. We go overboard all the time on the Ben Joravsky Show.
Overtime, not overboard. Overtime, and of course that's super
overboard.
Cool. And overboard, that super cool music is being provided by Terry Cosgrove. He's playing the keyboard over there in the corner.
That would be a sad moment if you had me on a keyboard.
Ann Williams is playing the organ, and they're really making some sweet music there. Before we come back for discussions about whether Republicans, is there anything resembling a pro-choice Republican anywhere in the state of Illinois? What you got for me, D?
Terry, off the keyboard.
All right,
okay,
enough playing
Thank
the
you very
keyboard,
much,
Terry.
Okay.
He'll be playing chopsticks after the show. All right, 3 updates here. 2 national, the other local. We'll do the national ones first here. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, or as he's been referred to in the presidential race thus far, who? Really hasn't been doing much thus far. Cory Booker was the first Democrat seeking the presidential nomination to speak at the She the People Forum in Houston today. Booker made a big announcement. Kind of putting the cart before the horse here, but Cory Booker announced that he will have a woman running mate.
Okay, you're right. First, he has to get elected. All right,
but
to get the nomination.
When you're at the She the People Forum, you got to,
there are
up the audience.
There are many out there of the cynical persuasion who believe Cory Booker is running mainly to advance his candidacy as vice president. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay, that's
many of the cynical persuasion. I'm not saying I believe that. Just saying there are those who do.
Our president is in Atlanta, Georgia today. He and his wife spoke at a drug abuse forum. We have a few quotes from his speech to read from the president here in Atlanta today. Cue the ukulele. All right, so here we go. Donald Trump, he had to talk about the Mueller report here when speaking about the pharmaceutical companies rigging the system around the pricing of drugs. He added,
I know all about rigging the system because I had the system rigged on me. I think you know what I'm talking about.
He knows about rigging the system, all right. That's how he's the president of the United States.
Much of the speech revolved around praising law enforcement, the DEA, and Customs and Border Protection. Oh, and dogs. Yeah, here's the quote from Trump on dogs. Quote,
the greatest equipment in the world is a dog. Dogs do a better job than $400 million worth of equipment. Can you believe that? Only the dog lovers would understand that. I said to the Border Patrol the other day, They were giving me a little bit of a rundown the other day. I said, how does this compare to those great dogs? They say, sir, honestly, the dogs are better. I said, you got to be kidding me.
Oh, man, that's
funny.
Donald Trump in the studio, ladies.
I know,
and gentlemen.
Dennis.
Sounds just like,
You know, I do what I can. All right, and our local update. Cosgrove, get ready, buddy. You're about to be in the hot seat.
Oh, yeah.
We have an update here on our story. Looks like, toilet gate's coming back to bite old J.B. Pritzker here. J.B. Pritzker was at gave a press conference today, and he spoke about this. Let's see here. Pritzker said, quote, "What I know is what you all know from the reporting that was done this week." The governor reiterated that any review will show the rules were followed. Asked if the probe will affect his push for a graduated income tax, Pritzker replied, "All of these things will pass." Pritzker says he has no concerns at all about criminal charges. Pritzker attorney Mark Elias, a partner with the Perkins Coie law firm, in a statement issued earlier Wednesday, had said, quote, "Neither the governor nor the first lady have been contacted by law enforcement regarding the property tax appeal." By the way, that comes from the Chicago Sun-Times and Juan Fondelas.
All right. We talked about this earlier today. Dave McKinney, Bulldog investigative reporter for WBZ, is reported earlier today that this story. I, of course, lost my mind again, Terry Cosgrove and Ann Williams, because, oh, my God, this is bringing back flashbacks of arguments that political discussions between Terry Cosgrove and myself throughout the 2018 season. I, of course, ended up voting for Dan Biss. Terry has not stopped making fun of me for that vote ever since.
And it won't stop. So
Love it.
And he voted very enthusiastically for J.B. Pritzker. My concern at the time, Ann Williams, was that J.B. Pritzker had a host of controversies swirling around him that would be problematic in a general election against Bruce Rauner. Terry Cosgrove took great delight in saying how wrong I was about that, and because, as you know,
and a record number of voters in Illinois also disagreed with you.
yes, they agreed with them. Wasn't the first time that I was on the opposite side of the voters. But I've always felt that it was problematic. We teasingly called it Toilet Gate. And already Republicans are countering very legitimate issue of a fair tax. In my humble opinion, Ann Williams, we desperately need a fair tax in the state of Illinois. I applaud Pritzker for advancing it. Progressive tax to have a higher rate on wealthier people so that we can raise the money we need to fund government. Already the Republicans are countering, and they're saying as, well, why should we pass J.B. Pritzker's fair tax if he doesn't pay his property tax? Of course, he has paid back the $330,000 that he saved by having a Gold Coast apartment without a toilet. Do you think, Ann, that this latest reporting from McKinney of the potential federal investigation, will undercut the efforts to have a fair tax in Illinois?
Well, I certainly hope not. I have to say, I think the governor is doing a great job, and he's been a great leader thus far. The mood in the General Assembly on both sides of the aisle, frankly, is much more positive than it's been in recent memory. In fact, for about the past 4 years, we're actually moving forward. We're getting things done. We're talking about things like the environment. We're talking about things like making life better for those who are most vulnerable in the human services areas. So onto the fair tax issue, Illinois is one of, I think, only 5 or 6 states that don't use a graduated tax system. It doesn't make sense. It's an antiquated way of taxation and a regressive way of taxation. So it's definitely something that not only makes sense in terms of a political argument, but it's just practical. So I feel that there needs to be a lot of conversation. There needs to be a lot of education. I myself have a lot of questions about how it will work and what the property tax relief will look like. But the concept is certainly one that we need to move forward with.
All right. And Terry Cosgrove, I assume you still feel confident that you did the right thing in supporting J.B. Pritzker in 2018. You're still confident about that?
1,000% confident. I mean, can I just point?
Go
let me
ahead.
just point
Yeah,
out.
You can and you will.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that what I said about JB bringing his resources to the general election campaign did not happen in spades. There are people that are giving his early vote program credit for Sean Casten, Lauren Underwood, 6 more pro-choice state representatives in the House, 2 more state senators. I mean, I don't think how anyone, Republicans don't argue with it. No one argues with it. JB executed a brilliant general election campaign, not only on behalf of his own candidacy, but on behalf of Kwame Raoul, on behalf of everyone else running. And I think we owe him a debt of gratitude in this state that he helped move us forward on so many issues that progressives and Democrats care about. And I stand by him 1,000,000% for the great job that he did during the campaign and his proposals around reproductive rights and so many other things. As I tell you all the time, Ben, I'm a one-trick pony, and you know what that trick is, and that's why I'm here today. But on the
reproductive rights,
and on the other stuff. So I know I don't have any second thoughts.
Okay,
whatsoever.
watch this now.
I mean, the alternative was Bruce Rauner, and I'll tell you the other thing. And Ann appreciates this as an incumbent state representative. Let's not forget, if Democrats control the General Assembly after the 2020 election, J.B. Pritzker, Speaker Madigan, and President Cullerton will draw that, not only the legislative map, but the congressional map through 2032. So if we have any hope of keeping Illinois a pro-choice state, keeping Illinois a state that respects LGBTQ rights and rights of every other person, then that's what J.B. Pritzker brought us. He brought us a map, a progressive pro-choice map for the next 10 years when Roe v. Wade is overturned.
All right, now,
that is the most important thing that came out of that election, and I told you. So everything else is white noise.
Okay.
Everything else is white noise.
Yeah. All right, now, Ann, you heard a very definitive statements coming out of Terry Cosgrove. Now, watch a little ducking and dodging. I'm going to ask him this question. Terry Cosgrove, watch this. Listen, we're going to watch some. Should the Democrats in Congress impeach Donald Trump? Yes or no?
I think they should conduct an investigation, a thorough investigation, and bring all the facts to light, and then decide from there what should be done. I think it's way too early to even be talking about it. I don't understand what the debate is. All these subpoenas are out. All this, they're on a fact-finding mission right now. I think it would be a horrible mistake to not follow through with impeachment, with the facts, and bringing the American public along as to why it's important. And the only way you're going to make that case is to follow all the loose threads in the Mueller report and to do it. And so then when you get to that point, you make a decision whether to do impeachment. So I don't even understand why he's being discussed until all the facts are on the table. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, because, by the way, that was not bad. I have to applaud him. That was not ducking and dodging. The reason why, you know as well as I do, Terry, you follow politics as well as I do, is that there's some people in the Democratic Party, a little cautious, a little conservative, who feel that if you go too hard, too aggressively at Donald Trump, the great swing voters of the world, I don't even know where these swing voters exist, will turn against you, think you're being unfair to the president, and you'll lose.
I don't buy that theory at all, and I don't even buy what happened to Bill Clinton will happen to the Donald because of Bill Clinton's. Bill Clinton had a 53% approval rating during the impeachment. It went up to 58.
I think it went up to 73, but whatever.
Yeah, up to 73. Yeah, up to 73.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a completely different area. The national security wasn't at stake over a blue dress. There wasn't. I mean, this is such a much bigger issue, but I still go back to I don't take this from a cautious standpoint. I think that that having hearings and bringing the facts out will educate the American public as to the crimes that this man committed. If you jump into impeachment tomorrow, everyone's going to go, wait, we want to bring the American people along with us. Build the case to why, and in the end, if that job is done well enough, then there will be pressure on Republican senators and House members to go along with it. And I think that's the important part here. Not that they need to be, necessarily, but you have to bring the American public along. I see this as a great teaching instrument about our Constitution, about the rule of law, what it means to break the law, what it means to tell the truth under oath, This is a great civic lesson that can take place in this country over the next year. Let's not blow it. Let's do it.
With you 100% on this.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, just if William Weld, the former governor of Massachusetts, does indeed run against Donald Trump,
Who is pro-choice, to answer your question about pro-choice Republican. He is the one. Yeah.
And he's the one.
No,
I think the Bush family. Isn't there some Bush? Aren't there some
think there's
Bushes
some
who
of
are?
the Bush.
George Bush probably used to be, and then he went right.
Yeah.
All right. So what I'm saying is, yes, if this evidence that is uncovered, and I presume it will be uncovered, shows that Donald Trump was up to his eyeballs and no good, that would fire up Weld's campaign, and that would be, I think, beneficial to the entire country. I agree with you on this point, Terry. See, we agree.
We agree on 99% of things. You're just wrong on a few things.
Dan Biss. I voted for Dan Biss in 2008. Oh,
I
Ann
wanna
Williams
be
raised
clear,
her hand. She
but-
voted for Biss, too.
No, I want to be
was-
clear.
I will just say this before, so I don't want to leave that hanging out there. I was endorsed Dan Biss in the primary. We were good friends, and I have utmost respect for him. But I did make a commitment that whoever came out of the primary, I'd be 100% on board, and I was. And to JB's credit and his whole team, embraced me the day after the primary. I became an ally, worked hard with them for his election and toward Kwame Raoul and for all the Democratic candidates. So that, I think, is a really test of character of JB, that even if you weren't with him then, you're with him now, and you're on the program, and he's been very inclusive and collaborative with all of us regardless.
And
so I'm
Benny's
real
still
excited
whining
about
about this.
No, I'm actually wish I voted for Diber as a dentist. I really do wish.
Well,
Yes,
and I just
Bob
want,
Diber,
and I
love
want to,
Bob
and I want to
Diber.
come back and say one thing, and I want to close down this 2018 election discussion. Till this day, I do not believe that Diber or Chris Kennedy or Dan Biss, it had nothing to do with them. It had to do with defeating Bruce Rauner,
Yes.
and with all of his money, JB was the only person.
And you know what? This irony,
that was able to do it. So
That's correct. That's
and
hence
so
the
it's-
big boy pants quote.
Exactly.
Put your big boy pants. All right, now let's go back to Republicans.
Yes.
And Republicans in the state of Illinois, there used to be a group of them and who were pro-choice.
14 state reps and seven state senators, and Jim Thompson vetoed most of these bills here. They were overridden by the Illinois General Assembly. Jim Thompson vetoed 34 of 34 anti-abortion bills
kidding.
in the 70s, and they came to his desk. That's how bad this was.
For some of our younger listeners, Jim Thompson, a former governor of Illinois, Republican. All right. And Jim Edgar was
Jim Edgar.
pro-choice.
And Judy Barr,
Judy Barr Topeka was. She never made governor.
but she was.
Well, and Governor Ryan had one abortion bill that came across his desk, and it was to cut off Medicaid funding for poor women for health reasons, and he vetoed that bill.
All right. Now, so the Reproductive Health Act bill the Reproductive Health Act that you want to become law that would eradicate some of these outrageous infringements on abortion rights. Are there any Republicans in the state of Illinois currently?
No.
Wow.
Not
Not
a single
one.
one. Not a single
In the
one.
House or Senate.
Not a
one.
single one. Not a single one.
That
Nor
is-
were they for 40 either, right?
No,
we had
no.
not one
It
vote
was an
for
entire.
Republican.
That's
Democratic
no.
vote.
HB 40 didn't have any.
But there's one. I want to backtrack. If there's one thing on here that's kind of a sneaker, it's called no confidentiality. Patient confidentiality will be protected as abortion reporting requirements sought out by anti-choice groups. I know the history of this. This in the 70s and 80s, you could see a license plate and call your state representative, or you could go online to. Well, there wasn't anything online, but you could call the Secretary of State's office and find. Like, if you saw Paris 15, which is my license plate. I can't believe I'm saying it on air.
Yeah, I can't believe you did.
that. Now I'm dead. And you could call and find out who owned that car. Mm-hmm. This bill was filed in the Illinois General Assembly that required providers, doctors who did abortions, to require very personal information about women to be given to the state of Illinois as public record, which revealed the town they were from. So it wasn't the normal public health stuff like an abortion procedure, the age, the race, all that, what county they're from. It got very, very specific because anti-choice people were showing up at Planned Parenthoods and abortion procedures, writing down the license plates number of women who were there, finding out who they were, and then would go out and find women at their homes, find women at their workplace, and harass them. And so the Illinois General Assembly had to pass a law that shields now our license plate numbers from the public because of them. But this law passed, which is enjoined. So in other words, when Roe v. Wade is overturned, this portion of law, which require very specific personal information to be made public to the Illinois Department of Public Health, which will reveal very personal information about women, which will then be able to be followed up by any of these anti-choice terrorists that are out there.
Harassment, intimidation.
Intimidation, harassment, not
And the
to
fear of
mention
it.
violence.
Yeah.
And the fear of it. So even if you're not one that's been stalked by the antis and threatened, you know someone that has, or you're hearing about it in the news, or there's reports. So it has the effect of quelching efforts from women to get just basic reproductive health care.
So please, everyone listening out
That's
there,
what I was going to ask.
right.
please
Close down.
call your state representative over and over for the next 3 weeks. If you don't know who that is, and 90% of people don't know who their state
I
rep
know who
is.
my state
He knows,
representative
I
is.
knows.
She's sitting right over there.
Okay, well
At
that's
your
easy. You can
service.
tell her right now to vote for.
At your
So
service.
no,
Vote for it.
seriously
Yeah.
though, 90% of people don't know who their state rep is.
Yes.
I'm always surprised. But at any rate, if you go to the Personal Pack website, we have a link that you can just click on it. It's a State of Illinois link. You put in your address. It tells you not only who your state rep is, your state senate, your member of Congress. You should memorize that for future. And then it will also give their contact information. It will give. Now this is a state website. It's not Personal Pack. We have a link on our website,
Right,
so
I
go
gotcha.
look for it. Click on it. It'll give you their phone number, their email address,
And that personal pack, personalpack.org. That's
Personal
easy.
Pack.
Personal PERSONAL. That kind of personal.
Yeah.
Pack PAC.org.
Yeah, and you can find all that information there. And this leaflet that we're looking at that you can't see in Radioland is there as well.
There you go. You
there's
see
no
that,
cameras.
listeners?
Yeah,
See
I
that?
didn't see that. No, it's not. All right, that is Terry Cosgrove from Personal Pack and Ann Williams, my state representative as well. I want to thank Monroe Anderson for being on the show earlier today. I want to thank Miles Porter, our superstar editor who helps us out every day. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. The ladies all love him for his body and his mind, as we said earlier in
Nobody
the show.
says that. And what I'm going to do here, live streamers, I'm just going to keep the live stream open. We got a special guest coming in for a bonus
Oh, yes, we do.
interview.
Yes.
We're going to post it on Saturday. But, we're just going to keep the live stream open. If you happen to
Okay.
live on the live stream at about 3:30, we're going to jump back on here. So I'm going to, turn us down. And then when our guest comes in, we'll talk to him. Tell him who our guest is.
Mike Flannery, Channel 32.
wow.
Yeah, Flannery will be in here talking about all the political stuff of the day. And
Tune in.
yeah, have to tune in.
Yeah, a
Mike
little
Flannery
bonus
is
for all you live
for,
streamers there.
yeah.
So
Mike
just
Flannery's on his way over right now as
yeah.
we speak.
So it'll be down for about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll turn it back up, and we'll let everybody hear that live stream.
all
with,
right, for that great idea, young man, give yourself a raise, take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And also, live streamers, if you missed any of today's show, you can download it at chicagoreader.com and chicago.suntimes.com. I'm going to cut it up about 4 o'clock. It'll be available for all of you to listen to. Go check that out. And like I said, we're keeping the live stream open here, live streamers. Mike Flannery of Fox 32, investigative reporter, is going to be coming in. You guys can check that out. Downloaders, we live stream the show. Yeah, we do. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time. You can catch bonuses like our interview with Mike Flannery. Check it out, everybody. Join us. Live streamers, if you're still there, Mike Flannery has entered the building. I repeat, Mike Flannery of Fox 32 has entered the building. Hang tight. Give us about 5 to 10 minutes, and we'll keep the live stream up, and you can hear our bonus interview with Mike Flannery. And if you listen to it and you got to go or something, well, we're going to put this up on Saturday as a bonus feature. So don't go anywhere. Mike Flannery coming up. All right, live streamers, here we are. Thanks for hanging in with us here. We're going to do something a little different here. Our bonus interview that we're going to have up for available on download Saturday. We figured if you're listening to the live stream, why not let you guys listen to it as well?
All right, very good. Yes, indeed. This is the first time we've ever done this. A live stream, a bonus. Last bonus was Dave McKinney, the intrepid investigative reporter for WBEZ. He's in the news again today with his latest story about Governor Pritzker and Toiletgate. My current guest, I mentioned that because I'm going to ask our current guest his thoughts on that. I'm going to ask his thoughts on everything. Really pleased to have Mike Flannery from Channel 32, political editor from Channel 32. He's the host of the Flannery Fire. I've been a guest on this show, and he's yelled at me. And anyway, Mike Flannery, the tables are turned. Now you're a guest on my show. Thanks so much for coming here.
Yeah. Speaking of Toiletgate, should we start right there?
All right. Well, I was going to ask you, but yeah, Toiletgate. No, let's hold off on Toiletgate for the moment. Toiletgate, of course, is the trouble that J.B. Pritzker is in right now because it is still haunting him. He pulled the toilets out of his Gold Coast mansion, got his property taxes lowered. I was outraged by it in 2018, Mike. I learned to move on, but apparently the rest of the country has not moved on completely. All right, the reason why I say hold off on Toiletgate for the moment is I just want to take the opportunity to sort of introduce yourself. Everybody knows Mike Flannery on TV, but how did you arrive at this position? When we started, I thought you were from Chicago, but you're not from Chicago.
No, I grew up in Washington, D.C., over near Catholic University in Northeast D.C., and out in Prince George's County, Maryland, on 43rd Street. And I went to Holy Comforter on East Capitol Street, about 20 blocks from the U.S. Capitol. And then I went to high school on North Capitol Street at Archbishop Carroll High School. Michael Steele, the former Republican national chairman, graduated a few years after I did. And then I went to Georgetown. I got a free ride to Georgetown. And for that matter, to my high school, my dad he was a Purple Heart veteran of World War II. It was on Guam. They didn't patch him up quite right. I'm sure today he would have lived to be to a ripe old age. He died 5 days after his 43rd birthday. Lived long enough to have the 5 kids. So
your mom raised 5 kids?
She did. I'll tell you, she's the one you should interview if only she were still here. Yeah. She would go to work. She was a nurse. She'd put us to bed, go to work at 11 p.m., wouldn't take lunch, get off at 6:30 a.m. She didn't drive. She'd hop on the D.C. Transit bus, as it was called back then. It's the Metro today. And she'd come wake us up, send us off to school, and try to get some sleep. And so anyway, I was editor of my school paper at Georgetown. I got the bug there, and I was hired. The Sun-Times, this of course is a new location for it, but they were on a hire the college editor kick, and they hired half a dozen college editors. And I was one of them.
What year was this?
1973.
Good God.
I started
Watergate.
Yeah, I started June 18th, 1973, and Watergate hadn't yet fully matured, but it was growing. The roar was growing, and I ended up Joel Weissman, who was the journalist. He was the Metro editor of the Sun-Times. And in August of 74, he sent me to City Hall to help Harry Golden Jr., the guy after whom the City Hall press room is named.
Yeah, a legend.
He reminded me of Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls. Harry dressed like that, had that Second Avenue New York accent. His dad had been Harry Golden, who was editor of the Carolina Israelite, and Harry edited those columns into a book, Only in America, that was on the New York Times bestseller list for 14 months. Yeah. Anyway, I was Harry's understudy and covered Richard J. Daley's last campaign in 1975, 74 and 75,
so
when
you were
Billy
a kid,
Singer ran against him.
You were a kid in Washington, D.C. You were born that's where you were raised. You came to Chicago, a babe in the woods, 1973. You're covering Richard J. Daley's campaign. You're right. Billy Singer ran against him, former alderman of the 44th Ward, or the 43rd Ward. So try to give folks a sense of what Richard J. Daley's administration. A lot of our younger, they hear about the machine, Mike Flannery, but they don't really know what the machine is. Try to give folks a sense of what the real Daley machine was like.
Yeah, well, it was, Harry Golden used to say it was like covering the Kremlin. He would, Mike, he had that gravelly voice, all that tobacco and all that early times that he had imbibed had given his vocal cords a distinctive sound. And he'd go, Mike, it's going to be like covering the Kremlin. And he told me, he taught me how to cultivate sources, how to work around obstacles to information. This was long before any Freedom of Information Act was ever passed, as much as that's observed in the breach these days. It was. I was addicted. I got down there and I thought, wow, this Chicago, this is a ton of fun. I mean, I've had job offers in New York and Washington, and I really love Chicago.
Well,
I
cultivating
really do.
source.
It's a great city.
How do you cultivate sources in City Hall?
Well, it's always a trade-off, right? And it's easier to do, I think, as a print reporter because you can segregate things out. You know, people want to get their message out. Mm-hmm. You can separate stories from. You know, it's I think easier to do in print, and some of the micro minutia that sources want to put out there, it's easier to get it into the newspaper than to get it on TV. But you socialize, you get to know people, and I think what I've decided to do, especially in the last decade. It's more important to be an honest broker of information, which is what I try to be. There are things where I do have a point of view, and that it's probably plain to see. But for the most part, I try to acknowledge and be aware that there's often more than two sides. Mm-hmm. There's not just two sides to many stories. There are multiple sides, especially in a place as complicated and as diverse as Chicago, with as many contending interests and as many well-organized interests. And the challenge is often to kind of dig out the points of view that aren't always represented. There are times when I think I do a better job of that than others.
Well, when you came in to Chicago, again, I'm going to take you back in time. It's 1973, 74. Richard J. Daley is running the show. And when I talk about cultivating sources, it seems like the all-powerful Daley machine, there would be very few people who would be willing to go on the record critical of him. So how did you operate in that situation?
Well, remember, this was still the 60s. I mean, 1973, in some ways, was still the 60s. There were members of the city council like Lenda Prey and Dick Simpson. It wasn't hard to find people who were critical. There was Harold Washington and Dick Newhouse. There were elected officials who were vociferous. And they were attacking Richard J. every day.
Yeah.
And remember, at the national level, so as much as I remember watching the spectacle in the presidential campaign in 1976. Of course, Daley died that December.
Yeah, that's correct.
December 20th or 21st of 1976. Watching the would-be presidents pay homage. They would arrive on the 5th floor of City Hall, step off that elevator, and bend the knee, and ask for the support. But then, there were guys, remember Abe Ribicoff had denounced him to his face on the floor of the convention in 68. So there were national Dems.
Well, I'm talking about the people within the machine themselves who had so much power, so much control.
Right.
Like let's, for instance, like if you're trying to get information about a budget out and you need, Lenda Prey, who's on the outs, cannot give you that inside information. So you need someone on the inside, but people on the inside may be afraid to give this kid Flannery from the Sun-Times the goods because they don't want to get in trouble with the old man. So how did you cajole the information out of them?
Because there were insider aldermen who who knew pieces of the budget. And Harry Golden Jr. used to he worked on the budget all year long, and he would cover every department, and he'd get the number. The department heads would go in and say, well, Mr. Mayor, here's what I think we need, $100 million. And he would say, well, I wish I could give it to you, or his budget people would say that. But it's going to be $93 million. So Harry'd write that. And then at the end of the year, he'd have every department, and he would say, Mayor Richard J. Daley is expected to unveil a budget of at least $1.9 billion. And because he had covered every department, including animal control, he'd be almost right on the penny.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, he
had
worked
it down to a science.
Yeah. So, there were members of the city council in some of the key committees who also had insight to this. There were the police and fire committee. They knew what the budget numbers were going to be there. They knew what initiatives were going to be undertaken. And
did you ever have any personal experiences with Richard J. Daley? Did you ever have any moments where you had to ask him a question or confront him or anything? Were you too junior, too down the
No, I would be at news conferences, or I'd be in the hallway and holler. So I'll tell you. So his floor leader, Tom Keene, gets indicted.
Yeah.
And by the feds, and he ended up going to prison. He ended up getting convicted, although that key pieces of that conviction, if not all of it, ended up being overturned after he got out of prison.
After he got out of jail.
But we learned that he was going to he was going to be at a funeral home up in the old 31st Ward, where the boundaries were somewhat different than they are today. It was on that near northwest side, becoming increasingly Hispanic, but still heavily ethnic, white ethnic, as we said back
Humboldt
in the
Park
day.
area.
And so I'm still the junior reporter. Nobody knows me. I just get in line with the other mourners, and Keene's next to the casket. So I go up. When it's my turn, I say, Alderman Mike Flannery, Sun-Times, we're looking for a reaction, sir, from you on your indictment today. His face flashes this rage, and he had this big, I think 8-foot-tall, 400-pound cop who was his bodyguard, and he was this short little guy.
Yeah.
He was probably a foot shorter than I, and I got my pen and my notebook poised to get his reaction. He doesn't say anything. Instead, he just reaches out and pushes me. I was so surprised I go sprawling. This is all in front of the casket. And then his bodyguard picks me up and literally tosses me out.
So how does that get translated in the article? He had no comment?
He had no comments, yes.
He had no comment.
At a funeral home across from St. Adalbert's, he had no comment.
And now Tom Keene, let's talk about that a little bit. Tom Keene, of course, was this legendary figure in Mayor Richard J. Daley's city council. The story, as told in Mike Royko's book Boss, is that Daley got the power and Keene got the money. That Keene used his mastery, his control, the finance committee. Somehow or other, he got wealthy. And he went to jail, but he still got wealthy. There are parallels to this day, Mike Flannery, when I view a powerful Mayor Rahm or a powerful Richard M. Daley and Ed Burke running the finance committee. Ed Burke with the property tax business.
Ed Burke was there under Richard J.
Ed Burke was a baby alderman back in those days. When you were a baby reporter, Ed Burke was a baby alderman.
His dad, Alderman Joe, had passed away, and they had given it, the precinct captains gave it to Eddie.
So these trends, these themes seem to reoccur in Chicago politics. The all-powerful political mayor who's not that interested in making a fortune out of his office. And then, the lieutenant who's running the finance committee. Seems like this trend continues in the city of Chicago.
Yeah. And now here's something too that I want to get into in my memoirs. But I'm going to tell you, the reporting class, the ranks have been vastly depleted, but it really was the case that there were captives, that too many reporters were captives of the beats they covered.
What do you mean by
and
that?
the people on the beats they covered. That they identified. I'll tell you, down at the police headquarters, used to be 1121 South State. That was one of the first things that I was sent to sub for during vacations in that summer of '73, right after I started. And I was working from 8:30 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. I had the overnight. The racial epithets that would be casually tossed around. Cops would come in to talk to reporters, and both groups would be using racial epithets for African Americans and Hispanics. And I mean, we've lost touch maybe with, but also with racial epithets for ethnic groups, for white ethnic groups, for Greeks and Polish people and Italians, and Eastern Europeans. I mean, it was just that kind of casual thing. You see it in some of the old World War II movies, and you'd. But it was all just in the atmosphere, and there was.
People were not challenged to sort of the conventions that dictated and controlled Chicago. They were reporters, and they overlooked it. They protected their sources. They were like, could you imagine if you're a reporter sitting and you hear a cop, release a string of invectives against black people or Hispanics or Jews or what have you, sitting on that information today? The pressure today would be to go public with it.
Yeah. And then there was another thing that went on, too. There was the tradition of the Christmas gifts.
Talk about that.
There was one guy in the City Hall press room who had a shopping cart. And aldermen and city officials would come in and deposit bottles of alcohol and other Christmas gifts.
Yeah.
And, to his great credit, Harry Golden Jr. just wouldn't put up with that. He just saw that.
So what would the guy who took the bottles, what would his payback be?
I don't know. I mean, there were rumors. I don't know. There were rumors that some of these guys occasionally got tips, checks, cash from real estate interests. That was all part and parcel for some. Let's maybe a couple guys.
Yeah.
And there were 4 daily newspapers and 5 if you and we should count the Defender, and then really 6 if you count the Polish Daily Zagoda that frequently had a reporter there. Plus there were the radio guys, Bill Cameron, Bob Crawford. I'll just tell you, the reporting biz is a lot cleaner today than it used to be. And everybody talks about, what was the name of the Trib reporter who was on the payroll back in the 30s of the Capone gang and double-crossed him somehow, and he got assassinated going to the train downtown.
Yeah.
And the Tribune was outraged about it until they investigated it and discovered, maybe he had it coming.
Yeah.
That is a lot cleaner today.
All right. Now, so you made the transition from newspapers to TV. Talk about that.
Yeah, boy, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I had I didn't know which end of the microphone to talk into, and I'd been on Channel 11 frequently as a guest, and unbeknownst to me, the bosses at Channel 2 were looking for somebody new to do politics, and so they offered me a $10,000 raise, $10,000 more than I was making at the Sun-Times, and I said, well, that's pretty good. They offered me 38. I was making, with overtime and weekend work, I was making 28. So I said, okay. And the Sun-Times, Ralph Otwell was the editor then. He said, hey, if you ever want to come back, the door's open. I should probably go check and see. Is the door still open for me here?
I don't know, but I had to let you in. So if you have this badge, the door is open. I don't think there's anybody in this building who was in the building back in 19...
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, no. No,
Albert
not-
Dickens, my good friend Albert Dickens. I don't know if you know him. He at the time. No, he was with the Daily
Fran
News.
Spielman was in the City Hall
Fran
press
Spielman,
room
yeah.
with me. She was working for WIND Radio.
Yeah, exactly. She was
So
not with
Franny
us
and
sometimes.
I were there in the last days of Old Man Daly, and we've been
All these mayors.
through all these mayors.
All right, so you're on TV now. In 1983, Harold Washington is elected. The city, there's tumult in the city. Council wars breaks out. As a reporter, a TV reporter, where the whole city is watching you, the north side, white part of the city, the south side, black side of the city, how do you keep stay out of that warfare, if I will, just
Yeah,
boil
was
it down to that.
It was
How do you
hard,
do that?
and it was in the end. Well, here I had I had sort of political vertigo or ethnic vertigo. I remember there was one day, and I was working 12 and 14-hour days during that campaign, and people have said, "Oh, isn't this Trump?" Isn't the era of Trump as the craziest you've ever seen? I said, absolutely not. Doesn't even hold a candle to the Harold Washington, Bernie Epton thing.
Yeah, 1983.
That was the wildest, most out of control contest I ever endured. Whether it was up at St. Pascal's, where those people were hurling the racial invective at Harold Washington, who'd was paying a visit.
You were
to the
there? You were there
Northwest
that
side.
Sunday?
Yeah. And it was, so this one day, I went down to that Serbian parish hall down in the 10th Ward, right behind where Eddie Verdoliak had his place on Avenue J. Mm-hmm. It was just a few doors. It was back and down a few doors in that Serbian parish hall. And I walk in there, and people come up at me and my camera guy, and they go, "Flannery, you dirty N lover, you go F yourself. You can just, I've had it with you and all your bull bleep." All right, sir, thank you very much. And you, sir, too. Thank you very much. Well, we go about 60 blocks north up to 48th Street, where Reverend B. Herbert Martin, who's still around. I saw him at a protest of the Obama Presidential Center last year. His Progressive Baptist Church. And we walk in, and people come up to complain about, African Americans come up to complain about what they've perceived as racist coverage or racially freighted coverage, and that I haven't been fair to Harold, and these folks down there feeling I hadn't been fair to Verdoliak and to Bernie Epton, and it was quite a.
And what would you say to them?
Quite a ringer to go through. Well, I would say to both sides. I said, so what's your complaint? To tell me specifically, because I respectfully disagree. And here was the thing that I was struck by. They never cited something I had said. They didn't have a story. So they would cite something Walter Jacobson had said or done.
Yeah.
Or something that had been in the Tribune. But here I was the media.
Yeah.
And Reverend Jesse Jackson invited me down after Harold got elected. He invited a bunch of people to come to Operation Push for their media watchdog committee. It was called something like that. And he said Carol Marine and I were the only reporters who ever came. And I came, and probably for 90 minutes, people were screaming, and they were upset. They were distraught, and they were thoughtful. They had examples of stories that they cited. Some of them had clipped things out of the newspaper. Some of them had handwritten transcripts, transcribed stories. Not a one had a story that I had done. And as I was just listening to the people vet, I realized at some point I had become the white media. And I don't know when that happened, but I was the guy who was there. These other guys and gals who had done these stories weren't there. I was the guy that they could they could talk to or shout at. And that. So at the end of it, people came up to me and said, "Geez, Flannery, thanks for coming."
Yeah.
That probably wasn't fun for you, but thanks for coming. I said, "No, I learned a lot." And one of the enduring lessons is, and I don't know when it happened, but I was the incarnation of the media.
Yeah.
And I had to reconcile myself to that.
Well, now you talked earlier about a point of view, and in your position, as you said, you're viewed as the media. When you're in this 1983, you're the white media, where you're on 48th Street, and when you're in the 10th Ward, you're like the sellout
the
media,
fake news sellout media.
Yeah,
Yeah. Before fake news was a thing.
So. I'm not going to ask you what your point of view is, because I know you're going to tell me anyway. But do you have a point of view? And do you ever find yourself biting your tongue to subvert it and keep it from coming out?
Well, I mean, look, there's no secret here. I mean, I was raised Irish Catholic, and I was up in Northeast Washington, in an integrated neighborhood where I was raised. Went to integrated schools. All through my education, and but I was raised Irish Catholic, and I had the experience when I got to Chicago and I got to the South Side. I lived down in Beverly. I had the experience. Wow, there's more people here who grew up like I grew up than where I grew up. Jewish people have described who moved to Manhattan, moved to parts of Brooklyn to describe that experience. I many years ago I dated a Jewish girl who grew up in Spearfish, South Dakota, and she got to New York to go to Barnard, and she said, "Wow, this is my homeland."
Yeah.
and I had kind of that experience.
Yeah, I have had a similar experience myself. But go ahead. Yes.
So it's something I try to be aware of, and after doing this for a long time, it's easier than it was when I first started.
What's easier
to be aware, because I think when you're the atmosphere and the suppositions you're raised with feel invisible, or they're not easily summoned up until you've been challenged by people on 48th Street or people on 113th Street. And then it's the occasion for some introspection and some self-reflection.
All right. Well, I presume, and I hope I'm not making an unfair assumption, that you and your family were big fans of the Kennedys, John F. Kennedy.
Oh my God, I had his name. I'm right-handed, so I wrote his name on my left arm. And I remember I was the eldest of 5, and I pulled 3 of my sisters in a wagon down to the Kennedy headquarters on Rhode Island Avenue in D.C., the local headquarters, and we just filled up on bumper stickers and signs. So that was my first presidential inauguration that I went to, was in 1960. My dad was so excited about Kennedy's election. He hoisted me on his shoulders, and it was bitterly cold, and there'd been 7 inches of snow the night before. But yeah, of course. And so I'll tell you, when Harold Washington got elected, I recognized that phenomenon. I said, I've been here. I've seen this.
Yeah. It's always been easier for me in this respect, Mike. I worked for the Reader, the alternative newspaper. They absolutely encouraged me to express my point of view, and so I've done that my whole career. But I realized that in mainstream journalism, that's not the norm. You're supposed to stifle it. You're supposed to keep it covered and hidden. And then you have the additional situation, and not just being, an Irish Catholic kid who was raised by Democrats, I presume, trying to be fair to Republicans. Good luck with that. You work for Fox, and there is local Fox and national Fox. And national Fox is, of course, completely affiliated in the public's mind with the Republican Party. So how do you deal with that situation?
Well, I mean, I tell people I'm in the part of Fox where Chris Wallace is and Brett Baer. Fox News Sunday comes on right after my show on Sunday morning. It's first airs Friday night at 9:30, and then rebroadcast 8:30 Sunday morning. Then Chris Wallace is up. Pete Buttigieg is going to be, I think, May.
Yeah, he's going to be
May
on the
19th.
town hall.
May 19th, he's doing a town hall, and the questioner is going to be Chris Wallace. That's where I am. I'm not, so Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, they do their own very opinionated show. I try to go down the middle, more like the Chris Wallace, the show. That's the role. And so, has Rupert Murdoch ever called me and said,
Flannery,
do XYZ? No, absolutely not. And we're Chicago based. We do Rahm. We cover Pritzker, Toiletgate.
Toiletgate. Yeah, I'm obsessed with Toiletgate. Before we get to Toiletgate, I'm looking at the clock because I know you got to get back to the station for the 5 o'clock news. Before we get to Toiletgate, got to ask your thoughts. Rahm's leaving office. Your sense of what his legacy is as mayor. 8 years of Mayor Rahm. What's your sense of Rahm's legacy?
Look, he, that was a scathing piece that Neil Steinberg did in the Sun-Times today. Mm-hmm. It almost was, especially the RIP part and the funeral part, just sort of it was a little over the edge. But he's good at that. He's good at going over the edge. Neil is. Look, Rahm's accomplished. I think he has a lot of accomplishments. As much as he and the teachers union have been at war, and it's been World War III, hasn't it? There are many signs of improvement in the Chicago public schools. That Sean Reardon, the professor at Stanford, says that in that recent study, over 5 years, the Chicago kids he looked at added 6 years worth of school knowledge, better than 99% of American school systems. A whole bunch of indicators are approaching the national average, not just graduation rates, but college admission, college application, college admission, college persistence. And there's, he's of course got that roll call of corporate headquarters and offices. It's not city money that is largely building these high rises that have popped up like mushrooms after a spring rain. Somebody's living in there, somebody's moving in these places, and it's been tens of billions of dollars that have been invested. That Riverwalk, it was actually Richard J. Daley who was the first guy to talk about creating a Riverwalk that I heard in the 70s, and then Ira Bach was the planning director who, Ira's now gone, but he laid out a vision for that. Rahm delivered on it. He's gotten billions from D.C. for the CTA. I was in New York not too long ago, and the subway system there is a frickin' nightmare.
So you essentially think he has a positive impact in the city of Chicago, and yet he did not run for re-election largely because most of the polling suggested he was going to lose. How do you suggest?
Sure, because to know him is not to love him.
You may be the only one who loves him, Mike Flannery.
To know him is not to love him.
Yeah.
And certainly I don't love him. But I think you got to objectively look at this. Now, should the was it inexcusable the way that the Laquan McDonald incident was handled? Yeah. And a lot of people share the wearing of that jacket, and not least being Anita Alvarez, who only brought charges after the video got released.
And Rahm only released the video after a circuit court judge forced him to do so.
Right. Alvarez paid for it with her job, and now we're going to see how Kim Foxx survives as she goes for a second term. Whether she survives politically. That's a tough job. Now, what are Rahm's failures? The murder rate spiked up. He can say that it's down compared to the 2016 spike, but it still remains, far higher than in other towns. There are, this legacy, this deeply embedded segregation we have here. But he can properly. Rahm's right to say that go to Milwaukee. go to Cleveland. Go to Indianapolis.
Yeah, no, I know. The bar's always lower. All right, now let me ask you, because I got my eye on that clock, and I don't want you to miss your news. Toiletgate. Putting Rahm in the rearview mirror for the moment, not fast enough. But anyway, moving on to our governor, Governor Pritzker. Oh my God, I saw this coming in 2018, Mike, and he was elected regardless of the controversy over having got a tax break because he had removed the toilet from his Gold Coast mansion.
Well, American politics is usually a binary choice. I don't think people were maybe if they were angered by that, the alternative was
you're preaching to the choir on that, Bruce Rauner. All right. So, all right. What do you think this is just a one-day flare up, or maybe, just a minor flare up, or do you think this will continue to haunt him as his tenure unfolds?
Well, if the feds keep pursuing it, yes, I think it's likely to dog him for quite a while. The question is, look, the Inspector General of Cook County decided that the $331,000 tax break had been obtained through fraud, and the key piece was the falsifying, allegedly, of the date when the toilets were removed. Now we can all make jokes and be outraged that wealthy people get to knock down the taxes on a Gold Coast mansion by pulling the toilets, but that's apparently what the rules allow, and they've been doing it for a long time. The piece that may be a legal violation and maybe a crime is if the date was falsified. Now, JB didn't sign any of these documents, and we don't know even that he was directly involved. In fact, the evidence indicates that he may not have been directly involved. There's some testimony that the First Lady, M.K. Pritzker, was involved in the project, but it was her brother, Thomas Munster, the Inspector General's report said, who apparently signed at least some of these documents. Now, when we asked Governor JB today about this, he said that neither he nor the First Lady have been contacted by the feds, not by the prosecutors, the U.S. Attorney's Office, not by the FBI. Question: has your brother-in-law, Thomas Munster, been contacted? Well, you got to call the lawyers on that. Are you paying the legal fees for your brother-in-law and for any others involved? Well, you're going to have to talk to the lawyers about that.
Were you asking those questions?
I was not, because it was a DNA news conference. It was about the DNA processing, crime scene processing at the Illinois State Police Crime Lab, which I've been campaigning for a year.
Yeah.
So they're adding resources there. Instead of waiting up to 14 months to get crime scene DNA back from a rape or from a murder, they now hope at some point that they'll be able to turn it around in 60 to 90 days, or even we'll switch to a new technology, rapid DNA, and it'll be available maybe in 90 minutes. So that's what I was focused on, but I knew other reporters are going to ask that. Stuff.
All right, now before I let you go, I have to just one little point. Anybody you ever go on Mike Flannery's show, he cuts you off like after 30 seconds. Hey, what? Yes or no? He starts bellowing at you. What do I say? Or you go to the next guest. So you don't like, you're tired of my answer. You go, Marilyn, hey, Marilyn, what do you think about it? That's Flannery style. So when you see him, I just think this is always my mind. When I go see a movie and the press come in, I just saw this in First Man. I don't know if you saw First Man, a really good flick. It's about Neil Armstrong, the first man to land on him. I recommend it. But anyway, it has one of those scenes with the press. It's the horde of the reporters, and I forget.
I hate the media.
The media, I know they look terrible in movies, but I think of you, Flannery, when I say, yeah, you're yelling at. Do you see yourself in some of those scenes?
I do. Yeah. I can play it both ways, but you're sometimes, I get into the role and I play myself. Yeah,
you're playing yourself.
I
in a
just
movie.
invest the character with all that energy and hey, want to know when you're going to answer the question.
Yeah.
When did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah, that's always a tough one to answer. Anyway, I better let you get back to that news. You've been very good. You stayed later than I thought you would. That's Mike Flannery, Channel 32. When's your show on again? Tell everybody.
Flannery Fired Up Friday nights 9:30 and Sunday morning rebroadcast at 8:30 a.m.
All right, that's Mike Flannery. I'm Ben Joravsky.
You're the best, Ben.
Thank you, sir. I'll take that. See you all. See you tomorrow.
Once again, catch Mike Flannery Fired Up, Friday nights, 9:30 p.m., and replayed on Sundays at 8:30 a.m. on Fox 32 Chicago. Big thanks to Mike Flannery. I'll have to get him in again sometime.